Welcome to Flat Earth Debate Uncut and After Show. I'm your host Nathan Oakley, and if you are new to this channel, or you've not done so already, then be sure to subscribe, hit the bell notification icon and join button to become a Nathan Oakley 1980 channel member and keep up to date with the Flat Earth Debate. If you would like to support the channel, there is a super chat that runs alongside each of these shows while they premiere, and there's also a PayPal, Patreon and crypto link in the info box below the video. Also below this video you can get £50 for swapping your UK electricity supplier to Octopus Energy, and this is of particular note if you drive an electric vehicle. Speaking of Patreons, I'm going to do a quick shout out to all of you who do support me on Patreon. So a massive shout out of thanks and appreciation to Sarah Griffiths, Rob H, Ben White, Maximum Gravy, Austin Whitsitt, John Kays, Tommy Swagnut, Michael Kahn, Patrick Gunnels, Banter, Will Brax, Mel B Styles, Troy Shuker, Bo Snail, Sampson, Maris, Hairy Blade, Mobile Max 777, Neo the One, Lost Cat FE, Rob W, Open Minded, Reese Pound, Del West Watson, Mike, Muted, Dick Earth Skeptic, Maria Neelands, Unbelievable Productions, Blue Ridge Ranger, The Real Gabster, Liam Nedrick Jr., Abraham Mohammed, Adrian Quintana, Skeptic936, Life is Short, theflatearthchannel.com, Texas Mike, and David Wayne Foster. So another massive thank you to all of you for supporting me on Patreon. This show is sponsored by Patreon, so thank you very much indeed. With that, I'm going to hand over to whoever is in Discord and Google so you can enjoy their dulcet tones while I set up for today's live show.
That's a good move. I can't stand Matt Damon, but I did like him in that movie.
Ford versus Ferrari.
Yeah, and there's another good one. The one with the guy that plays Thor. Played that English race car driver, Speed.
I think Hemsworth is his name.
Yeah, he played remember in the 70s they were going at it, him and the German guy. Oh geez, what's his name? I'll think of it.
I think I know which film you're talking about. It's a similar film to Ford versus Ferrari, right?
Yeah, he was a really fast.
Yeah, he's racing for Ferrari, and he gets in it's a German guy, and he gets into the Ferrari, and he's like, it's crap. They're like, it's a Ferrari.
Yeah,
he's like, no, it's crap.
That was a good flick too. I like that one.
Yeah, it's got Chris Hemsworth in it, right, as the other competing race driver, and he beats the crap out of a reporter.
The news reporter, yeah.
Yeah. I can't remember the name of the film though.
Speed.
Is it just called Speed?
Yes. But those two were going at it for a couple of years. And then when the English guy won, he retired.
I like Matt Damon. I don't know what you've got against Matt Damon.
He's from Boston.
So? Oh, okay. As a New Yorker, it's just because he's from Boston.
Correct.
Did you know that that's how they got you guys to have the Statue of Liberty when you were all against it? They told the New Yorkers that it would go to Boston. And then all the people who were against it were like, well, Boston can't have it.
Oh, really? I didn't know that.
Well, there you go. You New Yorkers are easily manipulated, clearly.
Mic check. Good morning.
Morning, whoever that was. Let's move tabs
what's
around
up, Nathan?
quickly. Who was it?
The Hammer.
Hello. I can see you now.
Hey, I got a guy in chat. He claims he has a really important question, but he doesn't want to come on the show because he's afraid of you.
Good. He should be.
He says you're a big bully and they're trying to claim victims here.
Oh well, I don't give a shit. And keep out. Good.
I wonder how many people that guy's told to drink bleach.
Sorry, the name of the movie was Rush.
Rush, yes.
Yeah, I didn't want to tell you Speed was with Keanu Reeves and Sandra Bullock, but
James Hunt and Nicky Lauder. They were battling it out.
Louder, yeah, that's right. Indeed. Man, it's really noisy here today. Got helicopter flying over. The communal hallways and doors are all getting replaced. So there's like scaffolding all over the building, builder bods drilling and hammering and sawing. It's not going to be a fun day for me.
Good morning.
Hey, 10th.
I got a few slides for you if you want to fill up the pre-show.
I do and I don't. Several people, one of which is a contributor, very supportive, has asked me to look at Bob Nodell's presentation from Flattoberfest. And initially, several of them kind of hinted at what it was they wanted me to look at, and I was like, look, if this comes across my path, I'll look at it. But at least one of them, and a couple of others who haven't repeatedly messaged me, but admittedly at least one has, I said, can you look at this? Look, one even said, look, how much do you want me to pay you to look at this? And at which point I'm like, okay, I'll have a look. No, you don't have to pay me to look at this, but by the same token, that's not, typically my vibe. I also mentioned that just by pure coincidence, I've got some other dude on the other side of the argument, much more blunt and, not as pleasant to deal with via email, demanding that I look at this and that. And eventually I'm like, right, my flat fee is 150 quid an hour. I'll send you an invoice. Tell me how long you think it'll take to look at this crap. Right. Or just that way of saying bugger off, basically. But by the same token, if he was willing to give me 150 quid for an hour's worth of work to look at some bloody video that he wants me to look at, I'd do it. I'm poor. So it was sort of semi-tongue-in-cheek. But by the same token, the following day, this guy was asking me to look at Bob Nodell's work, or his presentation, I should say, and was like literally saying, how much do you want me to give you? So it's a really weird coincidence, because I sort of had a bit of a brain freeze. I'm like, hold on, I've been really quite blunt with this person. Is this the person I said they could give me 150 quid to do an hour's work? And then suddenly it clicked who the person was. I'm like, no, it isn't. It's just a coincidence. But there we go. So it looks like I'm getting...
the way you said, I like the way you said flat fee. Like flat earth fee or just flat fee?
So how does that negate me taking 4 minutes of your time?
It doesn't. I'm inviting people to tell me what's in the presentation so that I don't have to do that particular work. It's the same. It's actually the same guy who asked me to read that Bible verse yesterday. And I should have said this. It's a bit horrible to Neil. Oh, fuck it, who cares? He said, why'd you get the guy to read it out in the New York accent? I wanted it spoken beautifully with an English accent. I'm like, oh, I'm really sorry.
I like the passion Neil brought to the scripture there. I was busy doing something else. So when you asked me to do it, I said, okay, but let me finish this. And Neil, timing was perfect. I thought it was good.
Listen, we all love the English accent and the way it's read and the way it's spoken. What can I do?
So I think you found a niche, Nathan. People are willing to pay you to look at things, so maybe you ought to take advantage of that.
Well, after doing it tongue in cheek, I did actually say it to my wife in that context. It's like, fine, in all seriousness, I might end up actually drawing up invoices for this shit. You never know.
No, I'll tell you why. I'll tell you why it's legitimate, and you ought to do it. How many years have you done your show? How much information have you gone through and examined? The hours and hours of work and knowledge, and someone wants it for free when you could have people pay you for it? I think you found your niche.
In my opinion, yeah, I think you should do that, Nathan. But also have someone to present you an argument, but then you want to do some presentation on it, I guess, or some sort of part of the show. So if someone they want to bring you like a super chat when people bring your attention to certain things, you could also say like a super in-depth look at something that people want me to delve into, something like that, I guess.
But we do that anyway for free, right? What
True.
The point is
for proofreading.
The point is that in this instance, I'm saying to the guy, initially my response is always the same: just join the show. There's certain hours where I'm, my head's on screwed in the way it's supposed to be, screwed onto my shoulders to deal with whatever it is you want to present. Now, in that case, just present it and I'll deal with it and it'll cost zero. Now, obviously, there's a financial incentive for me to do it in that way because the show makes me money. This is what I do for a job. This is what I do for a living. Therefore, if I can achieve that, I'll achieve it during those times of recording, as opposed to when I'm flicking through my emails in the morning. I mean, this particular email I got while I was at a class with one of my kids. So, like, am I going to sit here and watch a video when I'm at a class with one of my kids? Of course not. But in this time now, I can do it there and then. Zero cost. You know what I mean? So why would you want to pay me? Well,
I guess it's kind of like get a more in-depth, more accuracy on something that troubles them individually. Because I guess there's a lot of information, like you said. There's a lot of people. So if somebody was got like a particular point that they were struggling with, and they want you to look at that, what they were wrestling with, then they could get that feedback, that direct sort of feedback from you. Whereas I guess on the show, they don't want to get embarrassed, or they don't want to come on and they're a bit ashamed, etc., or they don't want to present it as evidence, obviously, because it probably isn't. Probably just a matter that they're a bit confused with.
It's one-on-one time. They want to pay for it. Treat it as a la carte.
Whatever. I mean, that is the tact I'm taking. Like I say, at the moment, it's very tongue-in-cheek. And it's just interesting, the different opinions, because both sides of the argument do this and will request I look at things and assess things and give my opinion on things. But when it comes from the Globers, it's presented in the way you'd expect, right? A very demanding, you'll be looking at this, because if you don't, my fear of my globe model will be going away. And I'm going to project that all over you if you don't look at this. That's what you get from the globe believers. Whereas, like I said with this example, the guy's giving me money on a regular basis and going, here you go, here's just money, here's money. Like people do. People contribute to the show, and he's one of them. But in this instance, he's actually gone, no, but can you actually have a look at this? Now, obviously, I'm not going to say, I'm only inclined to look at it because he's giving me money. But by the same token, it's like, in the same vein, you don't have to give me anything. Just come on the show as a flat earther. I'm encouraging that and have been for the last week or two to say, as a flat earther, come on, present your stuff to us. We'll do exactly the same thing, right? True.
Yeah, but I agree. I couldn't bear watching a Bob Nodell clip. Oh, God.
Well, since nobody's there, can we go to my slides?
Yes, it does. Got the one with is it AWL grip on a boat? Something like that.
Oh, no. You go to the one that has the globe at the bottom, and there's one below that one. Start there. I don't know why it comes in reverse order, but.
So, which one do you want me to start on? I've got the guy standing.
It's a guy on the ship.
Got it. Okay, so reverse order. Okay, I'm there. I've got the guy on the ship. Dip angle.
All right. This should be easy for regulars because we've been going through this. So this is what they want you to think is happening. They got the side-on view. There's a guy on the ship, and this is the dip correction, basically, right? So you see horizontal. Just keep that in mind. And then they got the Earth curving away from you. Now, we all know you can't have the sextant work on the curved surface, but the sextant works. So sextant's working off that horizontal there, not the curve below it, as shown here in the Muppet vision. Go to the next slide. You'll see the globe. And the same image, basically, but just from this viewpoint. There's a viewpoint of, say, a guy or a star, and it's GP, and then the angle of the curve. Now, that can't happen because you need that bottom baseline to be flat, horizontal, as shown in the previous picture. But they do that bottom part to say, see, there's the curve, all right? Now, since we got this in our mind, let's move on to the next picture. And the next picture, it shows a gal on shore looking at the horizon, and this is eye to sea level 2 meters. Ground here is 0.5 meters above sea level, and then sea level shown at the bottom dotted line. Now you can get an angle because it's a straight baseline to the horizon. So this is proper dip correction. You don't see any kind of globe falling away from you here because the horizon never presents itself like the previous two pictures shown in Muppet Vision. Go to the next picture, please. Next picture shows the observer eye viewpoint, then the eye height, excuse me, the eye height above the tangent point there, and then the horizon is straight. There's your baseline going out into space. And then, but they got the observer dipping down, looking at the curve of the Earth. Folks, no one ever experiences this picture. Absolutely no one experiences this picture except on the observer height above the horizontal. Next picture, please. You got a Navy ship using a sextant. It's going to do what? Dip correction. Accounts for height above sea level. Sea level, not sea curve. You see that? So it's just your height above the water is the dip correction. If you go to the next slide, we have live. It was a video. It's the race that they have each year, the Vendée Globe race, I believe. And you can see the viewpoint of a drone. So they launch a drone. Now we got someone looking at you sailing on the ocean. Now this is from the rear looking forward to the bow of the ship. So this drone is, I don't know how tall how high above sea level this drone is, but it's below the mast, obviously, of the racing sailboat there. But you can see the horizon is what? Horizontal. You can see it's not dipping down away from you like those images show. So it's really, if someone on that boat was to take a sextant, they'd aim it at that horizon and minus the feet there above the ocean surface, and they would be even with the water, sea level, which is the key to get that baseline. The next picture, another screen cap. So it says drone catching, so that catch. So here's the drone further out, showing a more expanse view of what's going on. So this one, we see the whole racing boat, the mast, everything. But look at that horizon. Is it dipping away from you like they show in that cartoon imagery? Or is it just flat and level as it's supposed to be, horizontal? Second to last slide. This one catches a seagull, it looks like, flying on the surface of the water. You can see the horizon is horizontal, flat, level, and you see the sailboat there. It actually ends up going near the sailboat as you finish the video, but it's just a great perspective to show what's going on in reality. And the last slide is a tremendous slide because it's got the sunburst just through the clouds, and you see the crepuscular rays, the divergent rays, and the sailboat. And what do you see? A level, flat horizon where the sky seems to meet the sea. It's an apparent position. Welcome to Flat Earth, everybody.
Welcome to Flat Earth Debate Live. I'm your host Nathan Oakley, and if you are new to this channel, or you've not done so already, then be sure to subscribe, hit the bell notification icon and join button if you'd like to become a Nathan Oakley 1980 channel member and keep up to date with the Flat Earth Debate. If you would like to support the channel, there is a super chat that runs alongside each of these shows while they are live, and there's also a PayPal, Patreon and crypto link in the info box below the video. Also below this video you can get £50 for swapping your UK electricity supplier to Octopus Energy, and this is a particular note if you drive an electric vehicle. Most importantly, if you'd like to join the discussion, simply mute the page you are currently watching, then click the link in the info box below this video to join the panel and express your views on the nature of Earth. If you do join, please don't swear. If you do, you'll be ejected, and if you are, please don't try to rejoin the stream using sock accounts. You'll be warmly welcomed back on the next stream. Please also share the show on social media. Sharing the show obviously increases the live audience, but this in turn increases the chances of a more diverse panel, so please share the show on Facebook and Twitter. Now, we are joined by 10th Man, the Adam Meakin, Arwin, Neil, Refracted Curvature, and a whole bunch of people in Discord. So welcome one and all.
Greetings, all.
Hey, good morning, everyone.
That it? Hello, good to have you all. Enthusiastic bunch that you are.
Morning, Nathan. Good to be here.
Really good. Should do a bit of housekeeping. Any evidence of a physical geometric sphere edge horizon, formerly known as Earth curvature?
It's over there in the math.
That's not evidence.
It is mathematical evidence.
All for that.
But saying it's mathematical evidence is just like saying it's right there in the words that you just used when you said Earth curve. It's like, what do you mean? Well, you said it, therefore it exists. You described it with language, therefore it exists. You described it with a mathematical language, therefore it exists. No.
Oh, and also, in the math, there is R. Just saying.
Yeah, where'd you get it in reality? When we say where'd you get R, we're not saying give us 3959 as a value. We're saying where did you measure that value in physical reality? As opposed to just tell us the number. We know the number.
I don't know. That's just what they said it was.
Let's cover that now. Any evidence of the R value?
I was going to say, this is where John, Refracted Curvature, said that the light went on for him because it was never measured. It was just math. It was never reality.
Well, if you lived on a sphere, that would make the horizon physical, and it would have to have a geometric distance from you.
That's correct. That's how the black swan stands alone as a flat Earth proof by inference. In other words, if you live on a shape, don't have to be a sphere, any shape, there's going to be a geometric limitation to your view based on that shape. Now, in the case of a sphere shape, that's a geometric limitation based on 1.2 times the square root of your observer's height in feet. Well, that distance is a geometric limitation to your view and is necessitated by living on a shape. Now, when you take away the shape and are left with an aspect, that would be a plane, then you don't have that geometric limitation anymore. So without that geometric limitation, you can't be living on any shape. You're living on a plane.
Well said.
Yeah, some people, instead of taking that, that logical route, I guess they assumed that they knew it was a ball anyway, and then devised a way to say refraction in their own minds to move it to a non-geometric position, which denies the measurement, which is insane.
Without R, you don't have a claim of Earth curve. It's an extraordinary claim in the first instance. And in order to assert it, you've got to have something in physical reality to back that you're actually on a sphere. And there isn't anything. All of their assertions start with the assumption of the R value, which they cannot measure. So the whole thing's bunk. Being on a globe's nonsense. We're on a plane. Any scientific evidence of gravity?
What is it?
It's an assertion that everything goes down at 9.8 meters per second. In the most raw form, gas debunks the assertion that we have gravity. A magical word that's used to get around all problems with the heliocentric reification.
Well, now, in Einsteinian, it's not that everything's going down at 9.8 meters per second. It's that the Earth is rising up at 9.8 meters per second. So that's not the description either. Like, they don't have a description anymore. Or the descriptions they use are nonsensical.
Well, the Einsteinian description takes place in a dimension that isn't real, so I'm not too concerned about the fourth dimensional space-time explanation with geodetics in space-time, meaning that Earth's moving up towards your relative position at 9.8 meters per second squared. I couldn't care less. That's taking place in a fourth dimensional place that doesn't exist. A description in maths only that doesn't apply to reality.
Well, yeah, but the Newtonian one has a R value that asserts mass attracts mass.
Yeah, they're going to need R for the centre of M2.
Would evidence for specific gravity count?
Sorry, specific gravity? What the hell is that?
Well, that's actually relative density, remember?
Is it?
Yeah, it's a measure of buoyancy. You use specific gravity when you drop a bob in your beer. You're just seeing the density change, and that tends to give you an indication as to the alcohol content, isn't it? It's just ages since I've done home brewing, but that's what it is, isn't it? It's given that title, specific gravity. But it's just talking about a differential in density, isn't it, Owen, I think?
Got a notification from the Flat Earth, Sun, Moon and Zodiac Clock app today, and it was something words to the effect of buoyancy debunking gravity. And like an idiot, I wrote to DITRH and said, you do realise that buoyancy is part of the gravity description, right? And then after I'd written it, I was like, this is an automated app that's doing things of its own volition, and the notifications have probably got sod all to do with anything DITRH is doing right this second. So this particular message is probably tied to some, I don't know, video it was publishing or publicising. And, you know, he probably read this message about buoyancy and he's like, what are you talking about? I haven't made any claim about buoyancy. But just so the flat earthers out there are aware, when you use this term, buoyancy, you're essentially opening the floodgates for them to just use that word to say, well, that's dependent on gravity. You've got to have gravity to have buoyancy. And then they beg the question of gas go down, go boom, boom.
I think you'll like this. We just typed in specific gravity, look, into Google. But what comes up?
I think this is Arwen's point, though, right?
Yeah, that's one.
Yeah, you bang on, Arwen. Check it out. Can you see that, Arwen? Type in specific gravity and the description from Wiki is relative density.
But that came afloat on the table when, like, during the time we QE started rolling in, right? And we got the grip on relative density. I was confronted with ballers at that time many times, like, oh, no, you're talking about specific gravity. That's what it is. It's just part of gravity. See, gravity is in the word.
It's another scale you develop, isn't it? So if you look here, it's saying specific gravity for liquids is nearly always measured with respect to water. That's what I was saying. So it's a scale based on pure water, isn't it? So it's that's the convention. The convention is water, and you're just seeing whether it's more or less dense than water. So it really is its relationship, its relative density compared to the relative density of water is what you...
Yeah, so applicable only like gravity to liquids and solids. And if you look at the first line, relative density or highlighted specific gravity, it's the ratio of density, open brackets, mass of a unit volume over... Yeah, well, at that point you go, well, first, isn't that mole? And if you've got a gas... It's not gonna be per specific amount of volume. That's dependent on the size of the volume you give it, and then you can apply Boyle's law, right? But ultimately speaking, it's not going to be that you can just say, well, helium's going to take up a certain amount of space in a given volume. It's like, well, that's down to how much you put in, and the contrasting effect to that cause, that would be the amount of gas you put into a container, is going to be the pressure it puts on the container, as opposed to the amount per volume, or whatever it said a minute ago. So they're using it in a way because it's directly tied to gravity in this description, and applicable only to liquids and solids, right?
I'm seeing something mentioning air, and I was just looking for gases. The references at air temperature.
It is mentioned in there.
Yeah.
gases.
So yeah, again, look, yeah, it's different for gases because you're having to specify RTP.
But they've just
But
said,
different,
in
you
terms of
can't.
relative density, which refers back to the original sentence, which would say it was the amount per unit volume. Well, if that's the case, then how can that be applicable for 20 degrees C at room temperature? Unless they're just taking it at atmospheric. That'll be mentioned. Where does it say atmosphere?
No, it doesn't. That's what I was saying. Look. It just
It
says
will.
room temperature.
But room temperature's got nothing about the amount per volume, right?
No,
And that's
not got
that's
the
not gas
pressure.
dependent either. It's volume dependent. That is equal volumes of the two substances. Volume, okay.
There you go. Must be specified for both samples and the reference and pressure. Look.
But where does that tie into the original description when it's relative density in terms of the water or solids? Suddenly the pressure's not accounted for. In other words, it's a completely different convention when dealing with gas.
Yeah, because you're having to say the temperature and pressure, which in a way is defining the volume, which is it's like when John always says, as soon as we get into discussing gases, we've got to describe them in terms of volume and pressure, not anything else. So it's harder to. But yeah, the convention doesn't flick over. Certainly not compared to this bloke here, look, testing the relative density of aviation fuel or the specific gravity of aviation fuel. Same thing.
Right, so they've transposed their specific gravity onto relative density and made it applicable in the first paragraph to only solids and liquids, and then later give you essentially a different convention to do it for gas. So it's it's not a universal convention like gravity. It's not applicable to gas. You've got to take into account different parts of a different convention, essentially changing the convention.
Yeah. Says it here, look, in British brewing, the specific gravity of a specified is multiplied by 1,000. Specific gravity is commonly used in industry as a simple means of obtaining information about the concentration of solutions of various materials, blah, 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 such as brine sugars, none of them gases. Yeah, it's not how it's. So yeah, it's liquids and specifically to know.
It's like Newton's or any other convention, man-made convention, derived and very useful when you're applying them to things that have a downward vector because they're more dense than the air that they're in.
Yeah.
Then when you get to the air that they're in, suddenly you've got to apply a completely different convention to this bastardization of relative density when described as specific gravity. Just another way of hijacking terminology that's fairly explanatory in simplistic terms, shoehorning in gravity and saying, well, this term actually means specific gravity. Does it? Why? Well, because we've got a convention for that excludes gas, and then we'll explain it away with a different convention 2 paragraphs later.
Yeah. I'll go through it and read properly, but
okay, while
you get into the volume of gas. Again, I was reading this. This is described as the most useless number in chemistry, 22.4 litres.
There it is, 1 atmosphere. Told you.
It is a useless thing because you're already defining the pressure you're putting it in. It's one of these. Yeah, I'll have a read anyway and see what.
Okay, while you're having a goosey,
later.
Any evidence that you can have gas pressure without a container?
No. And what we've just gone through specifies that, doesn't it? It's
right.
Making those statements that you have to describe it in terms of pressure. Pressure requires containment, and that's how you're going to work it out. The volume, the pressure, that's going to tell you how much you've got. That's how we measure gases.
So it's dependent on pressure to qualify it then. Go ahead, refractive curvature, and hello, Sleeping Warrior.
I was going to say, even if we lived on a sphere, we would still need a container for gas. Like even if there was an R value, you would still require containment for the gas.
Right. Specific gravity requires containment.
Yeah, and in the jargon, it's talking about atmosphere. So it's already assuming that we've got sphere-shaped air without containment in the convention when they describe gas and detail its pressure, because there's no need to get around it if you've begged the question of atmosphere, sphere-shaped air.
Yeah, I just want to point out
Right,
that the
even next
specific
to
gravity page.
space.
1 second wasted. Go ahead, Sleepy Mori.
Yes. Specific gravity is referencing water as the reference point, but other mediums are available, like vacuums of no medium, salt water, tar, you name it. Other mediums exist, and because specific gravity pins it to that specific medium of water, it makes them think that, oh, well, we've already got that covered. Yeah, well, it makes that a fixed variable, doesn't it? It doesn't change. So, like, we do have other mediums. So once you realize that relative mediums causes relative effects, it's like a piece of the pie for relative density, but it's only limited to water. Well, relative density explains all mediums, including objects in the mediums, and it's not limited to just water. I just wanted to point that out, that other mediums are available.
Right. Relative density is a very, very simple description of how things operate. It's a subset of entropy. It's in line with natural law and what we observe. It doesn't need paragraphs and paragraphs and paragraphs of description. It's experimentally validated. It's game over for gravity. You know, anybody out there that thinks, oh no, we'll still cling to it, and then look up things like specific gravity, read the first paragraph and think jobs are good, and unfortunately not.
And it doesn't require an electromagnetic interference to cause it either, just in case those people say that there's a little kick caused by a voltage or a current or an amperage or whatever. It doesn't need that. It's purely down to the medium relative to the object in it, and that interaction is controllable by us. You can calculate it using F equals ma, but ultimately the force that we're talking about is pressure, and that is the force that's described in Newton's first law of motion, and objects subject to pressure will accelerate. So we don't need to assume or infer gravity as the cause when we know it's pressure. Thank you.
Was that part of, or is that the main crux of Bob Nodell's presentation at Flattoberfest?
Don't know.
I don't know either. Somebody specifically has asked me to look at some of the claims made in that particular presentation. Several people have asked me.
Well, it's the kind of thing that we should look into if we know where the link is, but I don't know. It makes me feel sick when I see people on our side pushing basically nonsense.
What would you?
So when I listen to him talking and he's pushing nonsense, it's difficult for me to focus or concentrate, because the claims he's making are all based on fallacy or based on ignorance or based on deception, essentially, and it's wrong. But he won't let anyone challenge him. So how can we counter it? The only thing we can do is keep talking about it, because that way people will get the message.
Hey, Chaos, then Riven. Hold on just 1 second, Riven. Go ahead, Chaos.
I was going to say, even like John said, even if we were on a globe, we would still need containment for the gases next to the vacuum of space. The gases are entropic, so they would disperse into into space. So even still on a globe, you'd still need a container for gas pressure. And they want to say that specific gravity, well, gravity's strong enough to keep everything down, but not gases, but it's still strong enough to keep gases in a sphere, but not strong enough still strong enough to make it so it doesn't dissipate in the space. It just all doesn't make sense anyways.
Yeah, spot on. Hold on just 1 second, Sleepy Warrior. Go ahead, Riven.
Yeah, I was going to say, what would you say? Because you say pressure is the reason that things are kind of like change, fall at a certain rate. What do you say when what gives it directionality, such as like when you've got molecules that have got an intermolecular bond that's quite strong, such as solids and liquids, they will have a down, but when they become independent and they seem to become free from the gravitational pull.
No.
But how would you characterize?
Hold on, your premise is flawed. Hold on, the question you're about to ask has got a flawed premise, which is why Sleepy Warrior is trying to interrupt you. Go ahead, Sleepy Warrior, just point it out and then let him carry on.
He said words to the effect of like certain gases have got a downwards something. I don't know what the word you used was, but that's not true. The thing that influences the direction is the actual thing in question, how much matter the thing's got. The word that people commonly use is mass, But mass is one of those words that's so vague and it's lacking definition from all parts of physics. It becomes more of a belief or a religion element to it than it is an actual physicality. But essentially, mass is the thing that we like. The difference between a ping pong ball and a golf ball, they're both pretty much the same size, yet one's significantly heavier. Well, it's that attribute of matter that is what we call weight. All right, so two objects have got different weight, and because they've got different attributes, they behave differently when they're interacting with each other. And Einstein argues that when you've got two masses or two weights, because mass and energy are interchangeable, the golf ball has got more mass energy than what the ping pong ball has. So that's able to do more because it's able to convert more of that mass or energy into other forms of energy. So when you have them competing for the same space because they're in the same medium and they're moving around because they're in water, for example, there's a relationship there. There's an interaction. There's something happening. Now, we can argue all day about the interpretation, but the fact remains that the interaction we can observe, and we know that it's caused by pressure because we can manipulate that pressure by adding and changing the medium and stuff, relative density, right? We know that's what's causing the acceleration. So when you say that there was a downward something, it's not true. What you're describing is a perception of something going down, but it's based on how much matter is in the thing that's in question, that's interacting with its medium.
I wasn't saying it about gases. I did say liquids and solids. I said, the ones that seem to have more bonds, the masses or the little on a microscopic level, the little bonds between the what was you talking about? The matter. Like the more they seem to be together, the more they group up, the more that effect you seem to have seems to be more of a downward effect. Not gases. Obviously, they're omnidirectional. They seem to be dependent.
Not downward.
Never said downward gases. Never did say.
Hold on, just one second. Just one sec. While he's replying, Riven, can you go on mute? Because all we're hearing is your background noise coming through because you're just remaining off mute while he's talking. Thanks.
Not down. What you're perceiving as down is actually more mass, more matter, more weight, more whatever that attribute of matter is. You're perceiving that as that increases, it gains a directionality to it. But you're ignoring that the directionality is relative to the medium it's in. So if you were to change the media, as you gain matter with more intermolecular bonding, that creates more matter, and the globule that you're creating gets bigger and bigger and bigger. The mass is getting bigger and bigger and bigger, isn't it? The weight, the object, that attribute of matter is getting bigger. So you perceive that to be down. But what's actually happening is relative to the medium it's in, it's gaining more weight, matter, mass, energy. So that attribute of matter that we're describing, when you pin down to it, what you need to replace is the word down, change that to more matter, more mass, more whatever, because that's really relative to its medium. And then it makes sense.
Well, hold on a sec. What about an anvil floating on Mercury? Because that anvil's going up relative to the Mercury.
So Brian would say there's more structural support from the Mercury than there is from the anvil, and he's right. But I don't like the word structural support. I just say that the anvil's got more density, less density than the medium it's trying to sit in, right? It can't get into the medium of the Mercury because the Mercury is more dense than it. So the structural support that Brian refers to is essentially it's the more dense medium is displacing the anvil because it appears to be lighter than it. It's got less matter, but that's not up. So we wouldn't say that the anvil's going up. We would say that the anvil is less dense. So you can conflate, you can replace completely up and down with more dense and less dense to describe the interaction. And then that removes completely the up and down perception that we perceive because it's us that perceives it. Well, remove the human and the anvil is still being pushed up, isn't it, relative to the medium? But there's no longer a human there to describe that behavior. So you wouldn't describe it with the words up and down because there's no human there to relate it to. So you would have to say it's displacing its medium either because it's more dense or less dense. So you can see where the words up and down come from. It comes from the human describing what that person sees, which is why if you're upside down.
That's amazing. That's amazing. I think that's well said.
Does gas have matter? Does gas have matter? Would you qualify that?
Yeah, gas molecules have all got so you can look at the atomic weight number for mass for gas particles, and you can observe that hydrogen's first, and then helium, and then like oxygen and nitrogen are down towards 7 and 8, and then you get more dense gases. You've got then relativity, right? You've got an interaction relative to all of the gas molecules, and if they're all moving round, the gradient that would form would be based on the atomic number. And it's based on the amount of matter that the molecules have. So you'll have a skinny molecule, you'll have a medium molecule, and you'll have a fat molecule. And you can tell that the fat molecules are going to bounce the skinny ones away. And that's where we get the gradient from. Then they call that gravity. But what it is, it's the heavier molecules are moving slower. The little molecules, the skinny molecules, are being bounced away from them. And because they've got more matter to them, they've got more mass, they've got more whatever that word you want to use to describe it, it's just when fat man's bouncing little man away. Stuff. Yeah.
Yeah, all the words to describe these are all flawed in some way, right? So, you can use mass, but then you find it's equivocated with inertia and mole. The two descriptions are simultaneously used for the same thing. So then you use mole, and how can you apply that when you've got something that's expanding to fill the amount of space it's got? Well, you can't. So you end up sort of having to dumb it down to just try and get out the words that you're using to describe what Anthony's just describing. It's just, well, how much stuff is it comprised of as an individual entity? Is it more stuff or less stuff? Because that's what we mean when we say density. How dense is it?
So Quantum Eraser describes this as a dichotomy. He says that mass and mole are basically, it's two explanations for the same word. And it's actually a trichotomy, because Einstein says, well, mass and energy are interchangeable. So as mass increases, energy increases too. Now, whether you agree or disagree with Einstein isn't the point. The point that Einstein's making now is that you've got mole, you've got mass, and now you've got energy as well. E equals mc squared. So the energy is equal to the amount of mass, and then multiplied by the constant of light squared, but we're not going to talk about the light. The point is that he's conflating energy with mass. So you've no longer got just mass and mole. You've got mass, mole, and energy all describing the same attribute of matter that we don't know what really to call it, but we generally use the word mass. But the minute you use the word mass in a general term to describe what you're talking about, instantly it starts unlocking all these formulas and stuff. And the rumpus will come in and start calculating things, and there'll always be a little G in there somewhere or an R in there somewhere. But in real world, you've just got a relative reaction between ping pong ball and golf ball with the medium it's in. And you don't need to get into all these conventions. Just understand that they're obfuscated to death to try and get you into the trap of calculating into existence these forces that they want you to believe. And the reality is, whatever the difference is between a ping pong ball and a golf ball, call it whatever you want, but it interacts with its medium. So how do we explain that? Well, it's fraught with minds, and you're walking through a minefield. But the reality is, in simple terms, there's a reaction, an interaction with the object and the medium it's in, and you can call it relative density because it's simple, it's self-explanatory. Everybody understands what it means, and we get the directionality from the human. That's the key thing to understand.
I like
Anthony.
there.
Thank you. That's what I was looking for, Nathan. That's what I was looking for. Directionality from the human. That's where we get it from. Because that's the question I always get asked. Where does density doesn't give directionality? And it's a good argument from the Globers, I guess I would say, because they're trying to point out a point that the density of the object isn't what's giving it the directionality. But now you've said it well. It comes from the person, right? The person who's objectifying it, who's looking at it. They're the one who's determining an up and down, when really it's just reacting. But the reaction does seem to be, from what we can see, a horizontal behavior pattern. It's rather up or down.
You mean
Adam, you want to go?
No, you're missing the key word, right? It's relative. So there is no absolute down, there is no absolute up. You can't have up without down. It's relative. So in this case, for something to be going up, you've got something else going down in terms of their description with gravity and buoyancy. Whereas Anthony's saying, no, it's purely dependent on the density. And the direction it moves isn't an absolute. It's not going to move down. If you've got, I don't know, milk, paint thinners and honey, when you mix it all together, some of them are going to have a downward direction. Some of them are going to have an upward direction as they reach equilibrium. And ultimately, at the end of the process, you're going to have exactly that, just an equilibrium between these densities. But the vector that's only going to be induced typically because somebody's messed with something, typically things are in equilibrium in that regard. When you're looking at liquids or solids, things aren't falling down. When people say this nonsense, well, stuff falls down. No, some stuff falls down, having, in the case of rain, gone up first in the form of gas. That's a cycle. So you've got stuff going up and then down and up, and it's not just going down. And as for the stuff around me, like pens and microphones, I don't tend to observe many microphones falling down or pens falling down unless I drop them or knock them off. from where I put them up in the first place. So this whole notion is flawed, but it's only there to introduce a bias downwards, a direction that's absolute, when it's all relative, hence the description relative density. So every time you ask, well, what about the down bit? Why is there a bias? Well, there isn't. What are you talking about? What bias?
Yeah, change the
There's a
word down
relationship
to
between
more.
everything has an opposite in reaction, right? So
Hold on,
it's just the opposite to. There's only seems to have a horizontal behavior pattern. There's only things that like you said, not all stuff goes down, but all stuff goes up or down. It's only that between them two categories. I think it's an up and down relationship, an opposite. Like it's not. We give it a direction, but it's still.
There's a false dichotomy, isn't it?
You don't get a diagonal, do you?
3 people talking. Can you not hear Riven talking, guys, in the G+? Can you not hear him? Because you're talking straight through him. There's 3 people talking over the top of his conclusion.
The way to get round
it because there's not a diagonal sort of relationship.
Oh my god. Let's try that once more. Can you not hear Riven talking?
Check.
Go on, Riven.
Right, number 1, you're just hold on. You're distorting, Riven. So because they're ignoring you, you've decided to turn your mic up. So now you're clipping your mic, which is annoying me.
Sorry.
Right, just rely on me to get control of them. Don't just turn yourself up. It's really irritating because you're just distorting. Okay, fine. Right, can everyone in G+ just let Riven get to the end of his point? He's tried 3 times.
I'm trying to get in also, so when...
I know, I'm well aware, Eli. Thank you.
Sorry, Eli. In a quick way of putting what I was saying into is basically, even though we give it a directionality by down, I said that the opposite reaction between the behaviour of the mass, or however you want to quantify it, it doesn't seem to have any diagonal sort of. There's no like an opposite diagonal. It just seems to be an up and down horizontal relationship. Not saying that stuff goes down, just saying things that do go up and down, but it only seems to be within that category. So because it doesn't go diagonal in any other direction, I think that's the determination between the reactions between the golf ball and the ping pong ball. It only seems to, these reactions do seem to be an upward downwards relationship. That's the point I was making out.
Okay, Sleeping Warrior, this was originally your conversation with him, so if you want to round out your points with him, and then we'll move to Eli. And say
the bottom line is just change the direction words up and down to more dense and less dense relative to each other, and then you've got your directionality. You don't need the human, because obviously these things are still moving when the human's not looking at them. So if he's not looking at them, he's not there, he's dead or whatever. How would you describe it if there's no human there to make reference to? Because my left is your right. Well, you change the words up and down for more and less dense, and then there is no direction anymore. There's no issue there. So the answer is, why down? Well, because you've called it that. The real direction is more dense or less dense. That's it.
Okay, Eli, go ahead.
Yeah.
Okay, I see the overall arguing point. It's not really too important. But
breaking up, Eli. You're roboting. Can't hear
we're
you.
Talking about.
Try that once more, Eli. You're roboting. Or just go on mute completely. Anybody else was trying to get in while Eli figures out what's going on? I think he's just in the dead zone.
Something, but Adam was before me.
Adam, go ahead.
It was just a mild note, as Anthony was describing. I gave him a round of applause. Atomic weight. When I were a lad, it was atomic weight. And I think if we stick with the convention of weight, certainly it doesn't upset any of my chemistry, because when I'm making things, I weigh out my ingredients. I use the convention of weight. It works perfectly well in molecular theory for me as well. I don't need to use the word mass, and I just wanted to give Anthony a shout out there. It was noted, and it does save a lot of fliff-flaff and need it. You can use atomic weight, I think, quite happily within the convention.
All right. Yeah, I think what Anthony just did was beautiful, because he basically said, at least the way I took it, if you don't presuppose anything and just study nature, you're not going to come up with gravity the way the ballers do. they have a presupposition they have to somehow prove, even if it's mathematically and no other way. So they're always going to try to make it fit a sphere that doesn't exist, revolving around and all this stuff, and gas pressure without containment. So on all fronts, they die in their arguments to defend the sphere. They don't even have an R. So of course, they're going to use these words in the presupposition that they already have. So they're coming into it with a bias and trying to prove that bias. Whereas if you just say, look, I don't know what the shape of the earth is, but this is what this is, you're never going to come up with what they say. You're never going to come up with gravity if you start there. That's it.
Well, it seems to me like they're asserting a cause for this proportionality we observe, right? That's what it all comes down to. They're asserting a cause for entropy almost. Well, I guess that's what they're doing. They're trying to say that this effect of relative density that we see is caused by gravity.
Yes, it's the start. Yes, it's the start of their origin story, isn't it?
Right. So they're they're asserting a cause for something that we know that nobody knows the cause of it.
Correct. When we discussed what is relative density and ergo trying to establish the cause of it, you get down to the nitty-gritty of what you're describing, and it's a second-order effect of entropy. Ergo, when you insert gravity, you're trying to explain it away in the origin story as the basic cause of everything. It's the beginning of their story. That's what starts the process going in their world. So that's their god.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, exactly.
So what I was going to say earlier, I was thinking it wasn't such a strong point, but now I'm thinking it is. Because honestly, when it comes to gravity, they want us to think in terms of one direction down, and then us as flat earthers say, well, what about up? But I think that's a false dichotomy, because when it comes to the makeup of everything that's in existence from a heliocentric standpoint, gravity has pulled all of this gas together, and then somehow, all the rest of the matter came to be, the earth and the other physical things. But everything was in a gaseous state, right? And so when we're talking about gas, it doesn't just go up or down, it goes everywhere. You have clouds that move laterally, you have, even on water, you have water flowing laterally. It's not just up and down, but they'd like to at least get us to fight about just up and down when it's even more absurd than they try to make it seem. There's a lot more to the reality than just assuming there's a universal down.
All vectors.
And Tony said this one day. I liked when he said it. I never forgot.
Said what?
When he was saying there's lateral displacement also, because you don't just say pour water into a bucket and then it just fills up in a column. It displaces laterally first, all of the area, and then goes up.
Yeah, you don't fill a bucket up with vertical strips of water. You pour the liquid in, it hits the deck, it spreads out laterally first, and then it starts to rise once it hits the walls of its container. Only then will it start to rise. Well, that's lateral first, isn't it? Another example would be like in the biogeochemical cycle, where you see water evaporating in the hydrological cycle. That gas pressure that's being released from the surface water burning off and breaking that hydrogen bond, some of it goes up, but some of it goes laterally as well. It goes in all directions. And that lateral movement of molecules, water vapor or whatever gases they are, we call that wind. And that wind will always try and find equilibrium with lower pressure. That's why high pressure goes to lower pressure. And we utilize that lateral displacement of air in offshore wind farms, turbines that generate electricity. So there is examples of lateral displacement. It's just ignorant to say that there's not, but they like to say that because they don't want it to be true.
If anyone's ever played golf, I'll be quick, Brian. If anyone's played golf, it's always played laterally. Slice, hook, slice. Oh, okay, I'm on the green now.
You didn't have to rush into it. It was okay. We just came in at the same time. I wouldn't say gas moves laterally. I just say gas moves in all directions. Liquid, like in a bucket, has to spread out laterally because you can weigh a drop of rain, a drop of water. You can weigh a drop of water, and drops only get so big because of air, because of the density of air, that they fall through. You can weigh a drop of water because a drop of water will always have a singular downward vector. You can't weigh gas in its natural state. You can't do that.
This is your structural support moment, Bri.
I don't want to hijack everything that's been said. Yeah, I know, but I don't want to hijack everything that's been said.
No, this is where it makes a good point, your structural support, when we talk about the behavior of liquids and why there is a lateral movement and not. Yeah, it is that weak structural support that a liquid has compared to a solid that means it will distribute laterally first, because there isn't sufficient structural support. If you put a bit more water on top of the water, there isn't structural support enough if there's lateral movement is available. It's only when the lateral movement is impeded that the structural support is sufficient to add to the upwards increase. Does that make sense?
Well, yeah, because if you think about the pressure at the bottom of a bucket of water, or the bottom of a lake or an ocean, the pressure increases because there is a singular downward weight, or vector. Sorry, there's a singular downward vector to water, so the pressure increases. Now I know you have lateral pressure there as well because it's pressing in on all sides, but the weight, the water, whatever weight it has like weight. What's that? It's anything that will fall through gas, isn't it? Weight is anything that will fall through gas. You can weigh. Anything you can weigh in its natural state is something that will fall through gas in its natural state. But you can't weigh gas in its natural state. You have to put it in a container, and then you're just weighing a container that has a greater volume of density, or whatever, a greater amount of density to it. You're adding to the density of the container. That's really all you're doing. You still don't have a singular downward vector inside that container. It's just that the gas is in, and you can't even say with the gases in the container you can't even say that that's definitely the weight of the gas. All you can say is that's the weight of that the contained gas will give you. But there still isn't a singular downward vector inside in it. So it's, it swings and roundabouts, isn't it? It's like, how do you weigh gas? If it's in this gaseous state, I don't care if it's CO2, I don't care if it's man-made sulfur hexafluoride, it still has vectors in all directions. You can't weigh a gas in its gaseous state. Can't do it. It has to be liquefied, put it in a container, and even at that, you don't even know if you're getting a full weight. Do you really? You just have to go with whatever you get.
Yeah, that's why we have the convention of pressure.
Right. It's measured in gas pressure, not gas weight.
I don't like the word convention of pressure. Pressure is a force. It causes objects to move, like tire pressure. Pressure is a force, right? So when we see things moving, pressure is never really considered because people can't see the pressure, right? They can't see the impact, the interaction, the thing that's doing the observation. But we know pressure exists because we know that tires, when they go low with pressure, they can't sustain the weight of the car anymore and you get a flat tire. You can't see that interaction, but it does exist and it is a cause of acceleration.
I don't know if I agree with that because force would be pressure over an area. Pressure is part of the force equation, so it can't be a force itself.
So pressure could cause weight. Couldn't pressure cause weight then as well?
Be careful
the
with
force would technically also be weight and pressure.
Yeah, be careful with using their terminology because a lot of it's deliberately it's confusing because they want to trap you inside their convention, right? The reality is the force of pressure is the thing that accelerates objects, right? Now, when they define it as, well, pressure equals force over area, yeah, you do need the area because that needs to be pushing against the thing to give you the pressure. But that doesn't mean that pressure itself isn't a force. It is, because tire pressure is a thing, right? It keeps your car running.
Well, wouldn't it be the entropy of the air causing the pressure? The particles
No, it would be the
going in
amount
all
of
directions.
air. Be the amount of air bouncing off the molecules, bouncing off the inside of the tire carcass, and the more molecules are colliding, the more pressure. You've got to put more and more in there to be able to create the pressure.
Right, so the pressure is just like the air particles are causing the pressure, right?
The collisions with the container. It needs to have air molecules and collisions with the container, isn't it? Not just air molecules.
Right, but that's what's causing the pressure, is the air molecules colliding with the area.
Yeah, and as the molecules hit the tire wall, and there is a force at that moment, that impact, that force there, because we can't see it, because it's basically gases are mainly invisible. We know the gases do exist, we can light them and all that, so we know the gases are there, whatever form they're in, however they present themselves, we know they are there, and we know that they are interacting with the walls of the container, and we can measure that effect, and we can utilize that effect. But a lot of people don't realize or forget that pressure is a force. So be careful with the terminology, but don't be a fool. If you think pressure might not be a thing or whatever, stand next to a tire when it blows up and you'll feel the pressure.
A couple of quick shout outs to people who've super chatted while you've been chatting away. One is test message, winky face from Godzilla. I think he's checking to see if I'll actually read out his messages or not. Thank you very much indeed for the super chat there, Godzilla. And a Unicorn Laser Eyes who says, Bob the Sci-Fi Guy is in Discord chat saying, once a brick stops, it's still accelerating. Lol. Thank you very much indeed for the super chat, both of you. Really appreciate the support.
So when a brick stops...
Well, I suppose technically you could argue that the brick will still be under Brownian motion, perhaps. I'm not sure. We need a little bit more elaboration, but I think Bob's going to be turning things that are stationary into things that are moving, because he'll just say that, well, from the inertial frame of reference.
The accelerating
if you take away...
coffee.
Sorry, John.
Oh, no, it just reminds me of that guy saying that his coffee cup was accelerating.
That would be Moisty.
R.C. Moisty, yeah. Well, Bob actually has a point, right? In as much as if you take away the support underneath the brick, the reason that the brick stops falling, if you take that away, it will start to accelerate. So there is always a singular downward vector with the brick.
What medium's the brick in?
Well, it's surrounded by air.
All right, well, then in that case, the brick is more dense than the air.
You move the support away, you've set up, not by lifting, but what you've set up is another disequilibrium that will need to be played out. All you've done.
Correct.
Then Einstein would then argue that the energy that the brick has, the mass and energy, because he says they're the same thing. He says the mass of the brick, or the energy of the brick, is greater than the mass or the energy of the air. So that then is converted into kinetic energy because you remove something out of the... But it's relative density, guys. It's literally E equals mc squared is relative density on Earth. It's
Einstein's explanation takes place with a bending geodesic in space-time, though, doesn't it, Anthony?
I know, but he's describing in Narnia, he's describing what we see in the real world.
Sorry, in Narnia, he's describing what we see in the real world. Well, we don't live in Narnia, and descriptions of what takes place in fourth-dimensional bending pseudo-force space aren't applicable to the real world we experience.
I know. You are right to keep pointing that out.
Well, when you say energy and mass are interchangeable, that's a problem too, because neither one of those words are defined.
I'm not saying that. I'm just repeating Einstein's words in his equation E equals mc squared. I'm not saying that. They're his words, not mine. Don't ascribe them to me.
Okay, yeah. Well, if Einstein believed that and didn't define the words, then it's the same as saying Snurflegurks are equal to Jabba-hoots. It's just nonsense.
What was the point here? A brick is moving when it's not moving? Is that the point?
Yeah, we've got a few.
I think.
Go on, Brian.
I was just going to say it comes down to we're talking about different descriptions for the same effect, right? It all comes down to what is the most honest description, because that would be the most correct. So what is the most honest description? Is the most honest description that mass and energy are interchangeable? Not for that effect. Is it that the brick is still accelerating when it's on the ground? No, because that's not something you can support. All you can support is that when you lift it off the ground, it will fall back down to it. The most honest description is relative density.
So Brian,
with this, Tony or Brian, the reason that they're saying it's accelerating and has to be accelerating is, in my way of thinking, is to support the mathematics, because the way in which they describe an object's weight is mass times acceleration. Now, if it's not accelerating, that ruins the maths, doesn't it? Because the second it stops accelerating, by their definition, the weight equals 0 because it's no longer accelerating, because they require weight, the convention of weight, to be defined by mass times acceleration. So that's why they have to describe a static coffee cup as accelerating to it and attribute the 9.8 to it, even though it's not. Yeah.
Let's not shorten the definition for weight. So when we say weight is mass times the acceleration, don't chop off that end bit due to gravity, because that's really important, because we know that gravity is not a force. We know that it's simply an effect. But if you're going to multiply a mass by an acceleration due to gravity, then it's a nonsense, because if you multiply something, mass, by a 0 value, then you end up with a 0 value. So let's not abbreviate it to because it's devastating to their arguments. They're applying a Newtonian convention to a calculation which Einstein superseded and essentially made that 0, because you can't multiply by a 0 and get anything positive from it. But you're right. I think what he might be referring to is when there's an object sat on something and it's exerting a force, that doesn't mean it's accelerating. I think what he's referring to is when he says, well, from the inertial frame of reference, and then starts talking about woo-woo land. But it could be either. But let's just not shorten that definition for weight, because we always get criticized for not knowing the science, right? But if we cite the science back to them, it becomes nonsense. So weight's one of those things that's always a 0 value, because you can't multiply by an acceleration due to gravity if gravity is not a force, because it can't accelerate matter. So it's always 0.
Sorry, thank you. Go ahead.
Are you sure?
Yeah, I'll go after you. The point I make would be made.
All right, Adam, you just demonstrated what I think I said earlier perfectly there. Because they have a presupposition of gravity, they have to say the way you described they're saying it mathematically. But if they wouldn't have that presupposition, then that coffee cup is at rest. It's not accelerating. But because they have a presupposition of gravity, it is accelerating. But it's not accelerating, if you get my point.
That seems to be the issue, that as a layman you look at it and they're having to make the claim that it's still accelerating even though it's static, and the only reason is, like I say, to be able to put a value in that isn't 0.
Right. They move the value to 1, so you've got 1g.
This is exactly what I was going to talk about. But if you have more to say on it, Nathan, I'll wait till you're finished. I don't know if you're finished saying that or not.
Go ahead, Adam. I'm hijacking your point, and Brian wants to make the same point, so go ahead, Adam.
My point was to ask people who know this better for clarity on Tony and Brian, so off you go, Brian.
Thanks, Adam. I don't know if I know it better. I'm just trying to just pointing out something that the ballers have claimed for years that I pulled them on. They claim, and Einstein was the same, they always talk about objects in free fall, and they claim an object in free fall, right, is weightless, right? But if it's falling, it has weight. Gas is not falling. Gas does move in cycles with convection and different things like that, but it's not falling and moving in all directions. So anything that's falling does have weight, because if it was weightless, it wouldn't be falling. And that's where, this is the thing, where whether it's gravity as a force or whether it's Einstein, they're always talking about the object in free fall. Free fall is the part, right? It's falling, which means it has to have weight to fall, because anything with weight has a singular downward vector. And what's it falling through? The medium of air. So that's the little trick they have. It's the trick they play on themselves. They have it in their own head. free-falling objects are weightless. No, free-falling objects have weight. That's why they're falling. You know, it's, as I said, the most honest description. I'm finished.
So, Anthony, are you still around? Oh, go ahead, Refracted Curvature. You've been trying to get in a few times. My bad.
I was just going to say that I think one of the problems in discussing this subject is we're using their conventions to discuss the topic, and their conventions are based around an R value that's been debunked. So it's really hard to communicate these ideas when gravity keeps getting thrown in, even though that has a radius value to Earth.
Let's take this back to Nathan's original point that this came back from. Nathan's original point was you realize that buoyancy is it's a function of gravity. You need gravity in the mass for buoyancy to work. Well, we're using their terms. That's why at the end of the day, we needed a term to describe something that wasn't using terms like gravity or buoyancy, right? And I needed to think of something that made sense. You can't call the Egg's acceleration anything to do with specific gravity, because instantly you're thinking gravity to do with the Earth, right? So all I did was I just looked at, well, what is going on here? It's like, say what you see. It was like catchphrase, say what you see. And what I was seeing was a relative density change, something to do, and that's where it came from. And me and Arwin battered over this for a few months. We were arguing over the terminology. We were saying the same thing, but we didn't have the words to do it. And your point is valid. We're using their terminology to describe stuff. Now, it's not great to put our own terminology on it because it confuses things when there's too much of it. But the reality is we can explain the observations that we see in the day-to-day, the real world day-to-day, and it's got nothing to do with gravity. You're right.
Hold on.
Before Arwin just pipes
You're
in.
referencing me and what we did. It took a long time before we came to terms, right? Because I did hang on to a non-scientific understanding of gravity as a concept for a very long time. But once I relinquished that and admitted it's an aberration, dude, we got along perfectly. We were like totally on the same. You were actually kind of disappointed that I stopped resisting you.
Okay, thank you.
But the thing,
remember correctly.
the point I was making was that the terminology didn't exist, and we were arguing the same point, but without the language to do it. And once we realized that we were killing each other, but because it was purely down on language, then all of a sudden it was like, hang on, the issue is language here. It's not to do with communication. It's not to do with knowledge or intellect. It's to do with the words that we're using within their convention. They need to be changed.
Okay, Anthony.
Right, but we were all digging around. All of us.
My fifth attempt on my own show. Well, try once more. Anthony. So if somebody was to assert that gravity is a force and then used F equals ma to justify it, what would be your reaction?
Well, gravity is not a force in current physics. It's defined by Einstein in 1915 as an effect. And if you calculate the force using F equals ma, you are using Newton's second law of motion as a substitute in lieu of addressing his first law of motion, which states that a force is needed to accelerate matter. Not a calculation, not a sum, not anything. You've got to have a force to accelerate matter, applying Newton's first law of motion. And what they're doing is calculating the force with mass times the acceleration due to gravity, which is always zero because gravity is not a force. And then that calculation becomes a substitution for having the force in the first place. Well, Newton's first law doesn't allow you to substitute. He says it's got to be a force, not the result of a calculation. So no, you can't calculate forces into existence. You've got to demonstrate what the force is to get the acceleration, not calculate the force and assume that it's gravity.
Ask me the same question, Nathan.
Forgotten what question I asked. I asked about F equals ma, didn't I? My bad. It was actually from the chat, so it's Unicorn Laser Eyes. So if I was to assert that gravity is a force and my justification was F equals ma, what would be your reaction, Brian?
Objects weigh more in a vacuum, so that's the end of that. There is no more claim of a force after that, because a force of gravity would mean F equals ma. When they speak about that, they're speaking about the air having mass, which means the air has to be being accelerated downward in a singular downward vector, giving more weight to objects. So in a vacuum,
what Brian's just done there is he's sorry.
Just leave me finish what I'm saying, and I'll be quick. In a vacuum, objects have to weigh less under a force of gravity, but they weigh more, debunking that it exists. Now, Anthony.
So what Brian's just done there is given the flat Earth explanation for why. But what I was doing was giving the using their science against them explanation, because they're substituting mathematics for forces. You can't calculate forces into existence. It violates Newton's first law of motion. If you spit that back to them, they don't like it.
Yeah, I wasn't really in competition with Anthony.
Okay, what if,
I
what
was
if
just
that...
giving it.
Sorry, Brian. Just what if that justification
with
was
you.
being used outside the realms of heliocentric gravity, was being used in terms of incoherent dielectric acceleration, and then you asserted F equals ma?
Sorry, Nathan. Ask that again.
He's talking to me or Anthony?
Anybody who wants to take up this subject.
Well, that wouldn't make any difference. You're still claiming air has mass, and you're claiming that there's a force causing a singular downward acceleration.
What was the question, Nathan?
Again, chat, guys.
The question is, Anthony, if I assert that gravity is a force, and then I justify what that force is with incoherent dielectric acceleration, and justify it with F equals ma, what would be your reaction?
It'd be the same. All you're doing is you're substituting the mathematics for a force that, without demonstrating that the force actually exists, you can't calculate forces into existence just by F equals ma. You've got to demonstrate it, which is why I did my test recently.
Hold on, you haven't taken something into account. I'm assuming a downward bias, Anthony. What's your problem?
Well, then you're reifying, aren't you? You've got to still demonstrate it.
No, things go down.
Yeah, that's begging the question, and you're reifying it with mathematics.
Can I ask Brian something?
Yeah.
Off you go.
It's very crowded here. No problem, by the way. It's a great show so far. But I was wondering about this, what you said, that objects should fall slower in a vacuum. Is that based on the idea of a Newtonian model?
Not what he said.
Basically.
No, that's not what I said. Objects should, under a force of gravity, objects should weigh less in a vacuum, but they actually weigh more. And the reason they weigh more is because air gives a certain amount of, I call it support, they claim buoyancy, which is not weight. Do you know what I mean? Buoyancy is not weight. You know,
right.
That's not a singular, so it gives a certain amount of support. So when you take that little bit of support away, that little bit of lift, the objects weigh more in a vacuum, whereas it shouldn't do under a force of gravity.
Yeah, I understand now, but I kind of sort of philosophically disagree where both, like, what if it were and it isn't, right? So I think that it really doesn't matter. Like, it shouldn't fall faster, way more. It shouldn't be any different in a vacuum versus filled around with gas, because like it's only about the preponderance, the virtual center point of all the masses pulling on it, not its direct surrounding. Like the gas would at best like just slow it down a little in its being pulled towards the virtual center. So I always thought that in the Newtonian model, it doesn't really matter what it's surrounded by. Only the proximity to the virtual center of gravity is the thing that matters for its strength. What do you think about that?
I'll tell you why it matters, because they claim a weight to air for their pressure gradient, their air pressure gradient. They have to claim there's a weight to air. Air has mass, gas has mass, and that gravity gives it weight, which creates a pressure gradient. And they also have to, and they do officially claim that all the gases start to layer via density when you go up really high, but that's higher than any of us can go. You have to be an acid to go up that high. So their claim is weight to air for their pressure gradient.
Gas go down, go boom, boom.
But how would that change if you drew a vacuum around it? See, because it's more about the distance to Earth.
It's like the weight of water on top. It's like the water on top of you. It's like the weight of water on top of you, that downward pressure. It'd be that. You take away the water, you wouldn't have as much weight.
Gas go down, go boom, boom. Anyway, Adam's been waiting in the wings. Sorry, I had to cut you off, Arwin. But we can talk about gas go down, go boom, boom for the next 10 minutes. But Adam, do you want to just read out your quote? There's a few quotes flying by in the chat as well. Thank you, everyone who's been participating in the chat. I really appreciate it. But Adam, did you want to read this out?
I want to give a shout out to the chat. It's from Explain How. So I looked up the quote that they've stated in. It's a bit fuller, but yeah, I'll just read it. So this is from Henri Poincaré, I would imagine, or Henri Poincaré. When we say force is the cause of motion, we talk metaphysics. And this definition, if one were content with it, would be absolutely sterile. For a definition to be of any use, it must teach us to measure force. Moreover, that suffices. It is not at all necessary that it teaches what force is in itself, nor whether it is the cause or the effect of motion. Not sure what to make of that, but that's from 1897, I think.
Well, that seems to be directly contradicting Newton's first law of motion.
The laws of motion of Newton were not right. With that, I'm going to say, if you are watching this on either Nathan Oakley 1980 or Nathan Oakley Premiering streams, then stay tuned, as there will be an after show to follow. Unfortunately, if you are watching this live, this is where we bid you farewell. So, a huge, massive, enormous thank you to all of you who smashed the super chat, liked, commented, shared, subscribed, or joined as a Nathan Oakley 1980 channel member. Speaking of Nathan Oakley 1980 channel members, I'm intending to run this show a little bit longer every now and again after the live show finishes for members only, so be sure to check that out if you are a member, or join as a member if you'd like to be a reciprocant of that feature. Once again, stay tuned if you're watching on either Premiering stream. I've been Nathan Oakley, and I will see you all in the next video.
What a lovely day!
The Newtonian model really does is create the friction, which is in actual motion because of gravity, not the weight, right? It has no influence on the weight in the Newtonian gravity model. It shouldn't have, because it's all being pressed down, you see? Now, of course, in relative density, it has a massive difference, and we notice that there's vacuum weight, it weighs more, because the medium is even less dense, right? But that doesn't really translate in my mind into the Newtonian model, like what you said.
Well, they claim air has mass and mass is weight and air has weight. Weight is a singular downward vector. So their claim is that in their claim, if you remove the air from around an object, it should weigh less.
How?
But that doesn't happen.
How?
Because that extra weight of air is not on top of it.
On top of it?
Yeah.
What?
So if I put an object on a scales in their belief, I put an object on a scales, right? It has its own weight, right, given to it via a force of gravity, and it also has the weight of the air that is given to that. The weight is given to the air via force of gravity as well. You take away the air, it's less downward force.
Well, that would virtually be true, but like how that's never demonstrated. You have a scale, it doesn't weigh the air that's on above it. It doesn't do that. It just you set it to zero.
That's his point. There's not a column of vertical air above it pressing down on it to give it more weight. That's his point.
That makes it really confusing.
It's true though. He is right.
Yeah, you might have a point. I never saw it like that though. Because it's like a fluid. It just moves around. It's not really pressing on it like a body of water would press on the scale.
Well, it's pressing on you equally in all directions, so it's like sideways, underneath. You're getting the same pressure on your leg as you are on your head.
Yeah, but that's not going to literally weigh on a mechanical scale like that, right?
Well, yeah, but that's not.
It doesn't weigh like pressure, like weigh. It just presses. It just presses in all direction.
Yeah, but listen.
That's reality.
The point he's making is that when you got the thing on the scales with the air around it, there's supposed to be a column of air pressing down on it, right? But when you remove the air from it, it doesn't. It has the opposite effect of what their model claims. That's the point he's making.
You need to take a snapshot in time, Arwen, just to conceptualize it. So freeze time for a second in the chamber with air in. Now, we know these collisions are at exceedingly fast speeds, but at one snapshot in time, a good percentage of the gas molecules will be in contact with the pan, and in this case, what's important, the surface area of the object that you're weighing. So some of them will be physically in contact. That should have weight. Yeah.
Right, I understand now. It's because of like the entire model that everything goes down, go boom, boom. Yeah, then in that scenario, if that was real, then gas should have weight just like liquids and all that. But it's so preposterous, really. I guess that this is just an evolution of the consequences of Newtonian thinking that I've never actually reached even at a young age, because it's very confusing hearing all this.
Just go a second later, and all those molecules that were on the scales, being weighed, and they've gone somewhere else. Some of them might have bounced back and be weighed again. Now, the net average will be the same. However many times you sample it, it's going to be roughly the same amount of contacts, but they're there. They exist, and in being so, they should transpose via their mass that weight on to the balance. If you take them away, then technically there should be less weight on the balance.
Welcome to Flat Earth Debate, members only live stream. So this is a continuation from today's 1532 live stream. So if you are a member and you are watching this live, then hopefully you'll enjoy the show. I'm hoping to do these a little bit more regularly from now on. So be here or be sphere after the live show ends, just to make sure that there isn't a members only live stream that's going to go out straight afterwards. With that, I'm going to hand over to whoever is in Discord and Google for the typically broadcast as an after show that's now going to be live for you as a member. So hopefully you'll all enjoy the show. So with that, I'll hand back to everyone who's chatting away in Discord and Google.
Claim in refraction with the black swan.
Well, I don't know about that. It's like an in-between road. It's a dead end. It's like they're trying to keep their cake and eat it too, right? They still want to go up, go boom, boom, sort of with the buoyancy, because that's what it's lent from. But it kind of messes things up.
Well, it's buoyancy a singular downward vector.
Hold on a sec. I think y'all got off the point because you were pointing out how if you put something in a container and pull out all the air, you wouldn't be dealing with buoyancy at that point because there wouldn't be any air.
Exactly. That was my point. Exactly.
Right.
Yeah,
so that wouldn't be part of the equation. So Brian,
you're missing the point, John.
No, I'm not. I'm pointing out where that was a red herring to mention buoyancy.
No, you're wrong.
No, it's not.
It's on the scales. There's no buoyancy. It's sat on the scales.
Right. No, I'm not saying there is. I was saying that when Arwen said that wouldn't buoyancy be a factor, I was saying no.
Yeah.
No, but you're missing. There's something you're missing. Their claim is that due to the buoyancy being taken away, the object weighs more. But no, that's not their claim. Buoyancy, their claim is that air has to have weight. Air is given weight by a force of gravity, and this creates their pressure gradient. By them claiming buoyancy, they're claiming an upward displacement, not a downward vector weight. So consequently, them claiming that it weighs more on the scales because the buoyancy is taken away means that the air doesn't have a singular downward vector weight, so there is no explanation for their pressure gradient. That's the problem. So when they claim, that's why I said it's like claiming 7/6 R for the black swan. It's like, where did you get the R? It's the same thing. They're killed by their own rebuttal, if you know what I mean. So the buoyancy they're claiming is not buoyancy is not weight.
I agree with that. That's what I said. It's like, them invoking buoyancy does kind of like ruin the entire setup, really, when you think about the consequences.
It's devastating for them. This is actually a completely devastating point for them, but it's so simplistic. People aren't kind of, outside of maybe us, people aren't really grasping onto it maybe as much. I don't think they are anyway. It's so simplistic. It's like that is, it's like, if A then B, right? If A then B, right? A therefore B. So if gravity is real, objects will weigh less in a vacuum. or you know what I mean, objects don't weigh less in a vacuum. Gravity's not real. That's not correct. But you know what I'm saying? That didn't follow the AB. But you know what I mean? If force of gravity is real, objects will weigh less in a vacuum. Objects don't weigh less in a vacuum. Force of gravity can't be real. It's that simple, isn't it?
We're trying to rationalize unicorn magic at this point. You realize that, right?
Yes,
I think it would be very
Most
helpful to
definitely.
basically try to present this specific niche presuppositional based flaw that you spotted with extra visuals, because it's kind of getting difficult to picture it in your mind because, well, I've gotten used to real mechanics. So like the details are like, oh, it's tough.
Go to, what's his name?
You might be right.
What's the guy who sent the guy with all the bouncy balls? Gravity.
Thunderfoot.
Going down. Yeah, Thunderfoot. Gravity's like bouncy ball. Aero's bouncy balls go down, go boom, boom. Go and see what he's showing, and that's what the claim is for their gravity. The gravity causes air to do that. All the air has this singular downward vector, and then that would have to mean that objects would weigh less in a vacuum because they don't have all that extra weight on top of them.
All right, I have a detailed question about that. Is that actually official, or is the guy kind of like just inserting that because he's an anti-flat earther? Because is that really literally the way it is officially accepted? The way he presented it with the bouncy balls?
Hard to know, because there's so many different claims come from their side. So we have to get Neil deGrasse Tyson to state that.
Exactly, and he hasn't addressed it.
You're gonna get Neil deGrasse Tyson to do what?
To make an official statement.
Yeah.
So when he drops the mic, what's he showing then?
Yeah, but that's not air though. That's an object of weight because it has a singular downward vector. If you asked him, does air have weight? He'd dance around that a little bit and make kind of a funny joke. He wouldn't give that a yes. I even saw. Go on.
No, if air has weight, then I've hit my weight loss programs every time. If it wasn't for that dang air fooling me.
Well, if you eat air, you're gonna get lighter.
Yeah, well, I saw it comes to look. You know where it comes back from. Where it comes to it all comes to the explanation for a pressure gradient. Gravity giving weight to air, creating a pressure gradient due to weight, all different weight, right? And consequently, then no need for a container. That's what it comes back to. It comes back to gas pressure without a container. The air needs weight on their model. Otherwise, they have to admit they need a container.
Back in the...
Sorry, John.
I was going to say, back in my history class, I remember a teacher talking about, I think it was Sir Walter Raleigh was having a discussion with the Queen at the time about the weight of smoke. And he said that he could prove the weight of smoke. And what he did was he took a cigarette and smoked it and saved the ashes, right? He weighed it before he smoked it. Then he weighed the ashes in the butt after he smoked it and ascribed a weight to that smoke. Has anybody else heard that story? It's so weight's an inference, pretty much.
Yeah, but did that smoke have a singular downward vector? Because if it didn't have, then it doesn't have a weight. That's the thing about it. It has to have and smoke is not a gas, so.
Well, that was the Queen's point. That was her point because this was the beginning of the Enlightenment. She was pointing out that smoke doesn't have weight, but his rebuttal was to infer that there was a weight that was there, and the smoke still had that weight, but the air was pushing it up, and that's how he rationalized it.
In those days, they did whatever suits their fancy.
Sorry, were you asking me something? Did you ask me something, 10th?
Well, it's an interesting topic, and unfortunately, we have to go into all their claims, and it's a devastating topic for them. This is a devastating topic for them because they can't prove weight to a gas without putting it into a solid container.
It's crazy
Funny
because I
enough.
don't think they have a singular downward vector. If we're talking about gas,
No, they don't.
I mean that's what that's their takeaway when they're saying, well, that's why we have air here or whatever. But what I'm saying is, in the grand scheme of things, like you got like two molecules, they're just attracted to each other. What direction is that? Or two air whatevers. Like
Yeah, but
they're just attracted to each other. What direction?
Yeah, but air is described, like all gas is described as tiny particles that are tiny independent entities. Now, the bigger mass in a force of gravity claim, the bigger mass attracts the smaller mass. So in that realm of thinking, the smallest masses would be hydrogen atoms, wouldn't it? If we were to describe hydrogen like that. So hydrogen atoms should be absolutely no way should that go up. Helium, no way should that go up. You know what I mean? How come these things can rise when they should be?
I don't know why you're putting I don't know why you're putting an up and down on it when, like, just in relation to them, they would just be attracted to each other. They wouldn't. Well, like,
Well, it wouldn't be.
how
They'd
would
be
there be an
attracted
up
to
and down?
the mass of the Earth. But in their paradigm, they'd be attracted to Earth because Earth is the biggest mass in their paradigm. Do you understand? So that's the claim. The biggest mass, as they describe it, attracts all the smaller masses. So technically you should be less kind of attracted to the Earth in their claim than a hydrogen atom is or a helium atom is. But they go up. Do you know what I mean? They should be the first things that stuck today.
They have to define mass first.
Yeah, but we're just talking about their paradigm.
Well, they have to define mass first then, in their paradigm.
I don't disagree with that at all.
Yeah. Nothing to disagree with. Hey, it ain't going to be a
Pretty
live
much.
show today, man. I got just let me say this. There ain't going to be a live show. I got a conflict today, so if you guys are looking for me, I won't be around. Cool.
Well, not cool,
So weight is a force. Is weight a force?
So hold on 1 second. I will run a debate though, biofuel from a little while back. So there you go.
Everything's
Now,
all right,
continue.
mate.
Say again.
I say I hope everything's okay.
Yeah. I just had a conflict. I couldn't get out of it.
You've got another archery range slot, haven't you?
No, it's not an archery range. It's an appointment with someone, but you're close.
And might call in there on the way back. Yeah.
You know me too well.
Sorry. Anyway.
Yeah. Continue. Sorry to interrupt the discussion. I just didn't want people saying, "Where's QE at? Where's QE?"
I mean, on what Brian was just saying about the gas particles, and we were saying about up and down. If you think of yourself as a gas particle, there would be no. You wouldn't have a reference term for up and down to try and put a convention in your head, because everything would be based on the angle you hit the last thing. That's all it would be. There would be, an ascendant gas particle. You wouldn't have a concept of up and down at all.
That's what I'm saying. Up and down doesn't even exist, except for here where they're like, that's what's happening. But there isn't even an up and down.
In the ball world, there isn't.
That's
It's
why I
all
always
relative.
That's why I always give the fish example. If you were able to successfully communicate with fish, if you anthropomorphize a fish into a human voice, right, and you told that fish to swim down or swim up, he'd look at you and say, "What?" But if you said swim colder or swim more pressure or swim warmer or more light, these are all terms that the fish would understand. but he wouldn't understand up and down because that's not a terminology that he would use, because he knows that pressure increases with depth, pressure decreases with depth, temperature it decreases as you go deeper. So he would relate to temperature, pressure, all these words that a fish would relate to. But if you said up and down, he'd be like, what? Because it's just a concept that we use.
I don't know. I mean, they do have an up and down though. I mean, they live here with us. We also have an up and down.
No, it's a geometric description that in physical reality is based on basically differences in the system that the senses pick up. And then in the mind, it's oversimplified into a geometric situation where there is up and down, to oversimplify
But
it.
like, even with like, well, okay, if there was no up and down, then fish could be the way that I imagine space, not having an up and down. So all these like cartoons about Buzz Lightyear and them being on the same plane of reference is like retarded. So like at the same time, if a fish didn't have up and down, it could be oriented in any direction. It could be sideways. We don't see none of that. We just see all of them up until they go belly up. I just thought, I mean, it was too much to say all that extra. That's all.
What was it that John said earlier? Is he still around? We're just discussing unicorn slurple gurples still.
Right. Yeah. That's if you don't define your terms, then you're not talking about anything. You're all talking cross purposes. There's no way you can reach an agreement on the conventions you're using. There's no way you can't reach any logical conclusion unless you define your terms, and you're using conventions that don't have definitions to them.
Which is the reason why me and Arwen were fighting so much, because we were using terminology that, like you say, without defining these terms and coming to a conclusion, a consensus-based conclusion of the terms that you're using, you end up arguing over the terminology.
Well, we were still in the descriptive phase to figure out the patterns, and then after you've gone through the descriptive phase to basically map it out, what's going on, that's when you start to decide on conventions and terminologies.
I was doing some research on unicorns, and they all like this 10th. I've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 references in the Bible to unicorns.
No way.
You mean an animal with a horn?
Unicorns. Numbers 28, Deuteronomy 33:17, Job 39, 9-10, Psalms 22, 21, 29 to 6, 92, 10, and Isaiah 34:7. This is Numbers 24:8. He hath, as it were, the strength of a unicorn. He shall eat up the nations, his enemies. I've got more, but they're all.
How many did you get?
Yeah, let's get the real word in the scripture on that one.
This is what I thought, but it's interesting that they've used that word.
How many times did you find it?
7.
I've just found a citation claiming 9.
Oh, that's more than
The horns of a unicorn.
But the point was, I was surprised it's in the Bible. Was my only point.
It's in the translation of the Bible.
Deuteronomy. His glory is like the firstling of his bullock, so one animal, and his horns are like the horns of unicorns.
Thank you.
But that's why. But that's only because like only
links to rhinos.
Only children. Oh yeah, go ahead.
No, you go ahead. Everyone stopped for you, Eli. Go ahead.
Well, I heard rhino at the end, but I was just gonna say, well, they're just talking about rhinos.
Yeah, I was going to say, next time you use the fish with the ballers, they just flounder.
Job 39:9. Will the unicorn be willing to serve thee or abide by thy crib?
So,
the rhino will serve you.
Did a unicorn or a rhino get loaded on to the boat? No, by word, by name. Did they actually did they call it a unicorn? Was it loaded onto the big boat?
It can't be a unicorn because we have rhinos, but we don't have unicorns, so it must have been a rhino.
So they called it a rhino. Did they call it a rhino or did they call it a unicorn? Because that
They didn't have
then
those terms.
the entity would be split up in two.
That's what a rhinoceros is. It's a unicorn. Rhinoceros,
So
unicorn.
it's mentioned.
or some
So
shit
it's
like
it's
that.
called a unicorn in that story, in that reference.
Rhinoceros,
unicorn get caught on the
Hold
boat.
on. A rhino is a rhino and a unicorn is a unicorn. Why do you deny what's in the Bible?
No, they're the same.
They don't exist no more.
They're the same
If they're
thing.
mentioned as two
Rhinoceros,
different
I
entities,
was
then
in
they're
the middle.
obviously
Hold
not
on,
the
I
same.
know I interrupted everyone else, but let me finish. Rhinoceros, unicornus. They're the same thing. The only thing that's not the same is the fairy
it's
tale
not.
one with the rainbow.
That's
Yeah,
a later
tail.
taxonomy given to rhinos. When the Bible's written, we don't have that taxonomy.
That's correct. Thank you.
In the original Hebrew, was it the word unicorn?
Hey, by the way, I've just found out that the word gravity never appears in the Bible once.
You just figured that out.
Yeah.
Well, duh.
Well, if it were true.
The word science appears in the New Testament.
If gravity is a force, it will appear in the Bible. It does not appear in the Bible, therefore gravity is not a force.
Also, they got pseudoscience in the Bible too.
That got me going, stupid warrior.
Well, no. If we're going to make a claim about the unicorn thing, what was the word in the original Hebrew? What did that word mean? And does our conception of the word unicorn match what they meant at the time that it was written?
The Greek word monokairos. What it says. We can interpret
I
it.
got
as
it as
rhinoceros.
R-E-Y-M, Re'im. It's a wild ox.
I just find it interesting that all the scholars decided, and all the ways of writing it, they chose unicorn, knowing that the unicorn has a very profound meaning everywhere, but they still wrote unicorn.
Well, what does unicorn
I'm sure
mean?
they would have had a word that would have differentiated rhinoceros. Yeah. That's my only thing that I find interesting. You
What
can.
does unicorn
Can you just let Adam finish?
But then in the
we
King
did.
James version, they do state unicorn. Now, I don't know. I'm not a Bible believing Christian, but this is why I wanted to ask 10th. This was the first point. So we can go through all that, but the Bible says unicorn.
Yeah, well, you have to do, if you're going to do a word search, you're going to have to go into the context. You're going to have to go see what the original language said. I've never done that with that word, but as far as I know, it's an animal with a horn. So if the different translations want to call it a unicorn, they did, obviously, and others may call it what QE said.
Isaac
I don't know.
Asimov did a little study on it. He said it was a dangerous creature of great strength and was similar in form and temperament to the Asian buffaloes. The wild ox was a favorite prey of the hunt-loving Assyrian monarchs. The animal was called Rumu, R-U-M-U, in Assyrian, essentially the same word as Re'im, and was displayed in their large bas reliefs.
Does sound
End
like
of
rhino, doesn't it?
citation.
No, it doesn't sound like a rhino. That sounds
Rumu.
like
It's not rhino. Rumu.
Yep.
Yeah.
It's lost in translation animal, though. It didn't.
I don't know if it really matters to the whole conversation.
A really big.
How dare you,
aggressive
Brian?
Horse
It's critical.
with a horn.
It's critical.
Oh, boys.
Brian, are you trying to rumour the conversation?
Sorry.
Rumu, not rumor,
So you're
not
saying
rhino.
they didn't fly?
Yeah.
Did someone ask me something?
I did.
said, are you
I
saying
did.
that
Hold
they-
on,
that-
Neil. What's with the spirals, Brian? You better have a past history and hypnosis, or something's wrong here. Especially as there's three of them.
He couldn't afford the
despite-
gift for the four-leaf clover, so we had spirals instead.
Three
No, it's an old
sixes.
Celtic symbol.
3 6s, basically. 3 spirals.
Yeah, I know what it means, but I'm not going to go into it online. Like
No,
that.
it's a 696, Jake Nathan, not a 666.
Not the fax number of the
Yeah, but-
beast. That's 666 right there.
696.
Yeah,
Right down.
666 translates to 9. It's about numerology. The three spirals is an old Celtic, it's really old Celtic thing.
Does anybody know what
It's
the three
also
sixes means?
in other parts of the world.
Unless you got a picture of Brian leaning on the ladder, this doesn't mean anything.
Well,
Yeah.
if anything, I've got to take the blame because I did it. So it was me that demonized you, right? You hypnotic antichrist. That was the hidden mystic.
You wouldn't know what the
Hold
number
on,
means.
hold on. I see an emerging
It's
theme
just
here.
phone
Hold
numbers.
on. Just it seems like every time one of these spiral
Number of
666. Oh god. Every time one of these spiral 666 appears in the flat Earth community, suddenly there's this appeal to plausible deniability. So with Dearth, it was, well, Jaren made it for me. Oh, well, that's okay then. With you, it's, well, Adam made it for me. Oh, well, that's okay then.
I'm not sure how much weight anybody should put to the numerology thing. I think sometimes it makes sense
Weight.
and it's true.
Weight?
And then other times.
Wait, define weight.
Define mass.
Hey, speaking to which, Olivia Newton-John's grandfather had something to say on mass. You want to hear it?
Olivia Newton-John's grandfather.
Yeah, his name was Max Born. Max
Sandy from
Born's
Greece.
Einstein's theory of relativity. In ordinary language, the word mass denotes something like the amount of substance or quantity of matter. These concepts themselves being defined no further. The concept of substance is considered self-evident. In physics, however, we must very strongly emphasize the word mass has no meaning other than given by formula.
That
It is the
sentiment
measure
was-
of the resistance to changes of velocity. This word is fucking meaningless. End of citation.
I think
That
that
last part was
that
mine.
citation was best stated with lots of plosives and mic distortion. Thank you so much.
Sorry about that.
I think you'll find if you look that. I just want to say, I think you'll find if you look, the mass has been defined several times. It's just all the definitions are different.
Okay, go ahead, Brian. Bloody big Ed.
Hold on, was your father hopelessly devoted to that?
Go on, Neil.
Did no one catch what Brian said? Brian said, I think you'll find it's been defined. Okay, Brian, let's hear it.
No, I said it's been defined several times. It's just all the definitions are different.
All the definitions. So we've got a definite equivocation going on then.
Yeah, I think 3 times. There's three definitions. One is mole. The other one is an accumulation of stuff.
That's mole.
And the other one then is inertia.
I want the correct one. That's the one that I want.
Sorry. The other one, there's mole. There is an accumulation of stuff that's given weight via force of gravity. And then there is inertia, which came after a force of gravity disappeared.
Which
And
one's
you've
the
forgotten
one?
energy.
I was going to say Anthony had the third one. I didn't drop this in earlier when Anthony mentioned the 2, but there's also the resistance to acceleration, which Anthony didn't mention, which makes 3 descriptions for
Well, yeah, I
mass.
said inertia. That's why I said inertia.
That's inertia.
The resistance to acceleration is the same as the Einsteinian description when he says that the mass is the force in terms of the amount of energy it has.
Yeah, but before Einstein, mass, right, was an accumulation of stuff that was given weight via force of gravity. So just like when they showed the astronauts on the supposed moon, how they're only at 1/6 gravity, so they're a lot there, but their mass doesn't change, but their weight does. This kind of nonsense. That was it
No,
before
according
1915.
to no, that's incorrect. Find where weight is in Einsteinian mechanics. Define.
But no, I'm talking about before Einstein.
Oh,
after
gotcha.
Einstein, after Einstein, they started just calling mass inertia.
So if we've got 3, right, just to bring it back to Olivia Newton-John then, which is the one that I want?
You were the one that I want.
Terrible. There's a line from Red Dwarf. Right. Let me just give you my Red Dwarf gag. That was very good, by the way. According to Holly, the onboard computer on the mining ship Red Dwarf, he says it is better to have loved and to have lost than to listen to an album by Olivia Newton-John.
That's one way.
Ask me why. You're supposed to ask me why. I can't.
Why?
Because anything's better than listening to an album by Olivia Newton-John.
All I
It
got
sounded like Holly there. That was.
What was wrong? Why? Because it's greasy?
Thanks, Neil. I was about to go there.
I would like to point out that due to QE's citation about mass being without definition, my Snurflegurks have more weight than mass.
As do Arwinian units.
Yeah. And can I just add that you never see Pete Shea and Sean Hawkins in the same room at the same time?
I saw
Just
the two.
to put a curveball.
Somewhat. I might as well bring this photo up as it was in Discord, Skype.
Don't forget Briny in motion.
Brownie.
Briny in motion.
Brynian. Very good. So I can't remember
like
who
QE
commented on these
scientific
photographs that Anthony sent of Sean Hawkins and Pete Shea next to each other. Somebody commented afterwards, said Sean Hawkins just looks like a very sick version of Pete Shea. Like Pete Shea after being riddled with a few diseases. I can't find
Very
the
similar
picture.
looking though, aren't they? I know
I
the
can't
camera
see it. I
angle's
can't find
slightly
it.
different. I know the camera angle's slightly different on the two images, but they're very, very similar to look at.
Where did you post it?
I'm going to put it
War
on
room.
to you now. Where are you? Go.
Obviously fascinating stuff.
There you go, Nathan.
Okay,
It's on your
I got
Skype.
it. I got it. There we go, for the audience's benefit.
Obviously, this is Pete Shea's favourite sentence ever.
Just out of curiosity, has anybody ever seen Pete Shea and this guy together at the same time?
That's what I've just said.
That's what it's just. That's the joke, Adam. Bloody hell.
Oh.
It's
Are you
his
getting
favourite
all
line, isn't it?
Armenian on us? I'm
all
the
that,
one who's
I am just
all that Olivia Newton stuff got
quite electrifying, my bro.
no, got you in Xanadu, mine.
Electrifying, good one.
I'm just happy that he's had a shave because he looked like Father Christmas a week ago for Sean Hawkins last time I saw him. He had a big fluffy head and a big fluffy face, all white. It's like, Sean, get a shave your scruff.
Show my face.
I have to agree with Olivia Newton's father because we're talking about the physical here.
I think it was grandfather to QE's.
Whatever. You don't know that?
I got it. I got it.
Okay, let's hope we don't get it.
Yeah, incest is bad.
I want to get physical.
Oh, don't start that shit.
Hey up, chocolate.
I'm gonna get that song stuck in my head.
Let's get
Hey.
physical. Physical.
Oh,
Chocolate. God, Neil.
Neil, stop it. Chocolate, what are you doing in Discord?
Trying to get away from that song.
I don't think it was chocolate.
Yeah, it was.
I think so.
Chocolate's not in Discord.
No.
It did sound like it was chocolate, but then he spoke
was
again
it?
and I realised it wasn't.
If
Yeah,
Neil
but they
does-
all sound alike, don't they?
if Neil sings one more bar, we'll all be in Discord.
Who was that in Discord?
What do you mean by
No,
those?
there's no
It was Dice Low.
Somebody kick Neil out.
Stop it, Neil.
You can't even be singing a song. I don't think you can get in trouble off YouTube for that.
Of course you can. You're having me on.
Can you? I didn't know that. If I knew that, I would have been singing all the time.
Yeah,
Well,
you
Brian,
can.
you gotta-
Absolutely. Yes. If you steal
No one
somebody's
would
song,
consider.
it doesn't matter if you're singing it, playing it on your own piano. It's not your song. It's somebody else's property.
Yeah, but nobody in their right mind would say Neil was singing.
No,
Well,
no.
I had a guy tell me, listen, I sing very, very good, and I should sing tenor.
But let me
10
get
or 50 feet
the
away
guy
from
who
here.
butchered the
Yeah, the
English
guy was
language.
probably gay.
The guy who
Hold
said you
on, let me
speak
finish
good.
the joke. He said I should try out for tenor. 10 or 20 feet away from me.
Very good.
I think he was trying to convert you to gay, Neil.
Could have actually said you speak well. Or sing well.
No, that was the teacher I was dating. I said, you could help me talk good. She said, speak well. I said, yeah, you see?
10 or 12 feet away from me.
No, but QE, this really happened to me. And I was like, nah, I never really thought about it. He goes, yeah, 10 to 20 feet away from me. I was like, oh, got me.
New York is getting to you, Neil.
Move to Boston.
The prison system.
It's just a state of mind.
No grown man should ever sing a song that's originally sung by women. Seriously, Neil.
Don't let me start dropping some Chris Cornell on you with Black Hole Sun.
Yeah,
I can rip that.
no thanks. Well, Black Hole Sun is an all male
I'll go to
band,
the recordings of QE show.
Dude.
I ripped it and you didn't come in and help me. You were late on it. I remember that day.
You think he meant black body, son?
We've had enough racism from Arwen already.
What? What racism?
Hey, Adam.
My God, sorry. They dropped there.
Don't call me a racist, Nathan. I don't even believe race is a real thing. I was being sexist.
Oh, my bad.
That's it.
I see.
Or homophobic or something.
You can't call Arwen racist. He's 50% black.
No, that's Nathan.
No, he's 33%.
No, I'm not black. I'm 0% black. Zero.
Nathan
But
just
I
puts
have a bit of
arbitrary
Asian.
values in for how much of a proportion he is. I'm sure he's 3% Zimbabwean as well.
No.
Part of my black heritage.
3%.
Yeah, I'm on.
It's just a social construct for Nathan. If you accept the social construct, you can be whatever you want. Muslim, black women. You know, if he likes that.
You know who hasn't been around? The cat romancer. Where's he gone?
I think that was a one-time deal.
Who's the cat romancer?
Guy that was a lawyer.
Tom.
You'd have loved him, Anthony. He was a lawyer.
I listened to it. It was a great show. But hey, listen, what's the update with Rumpus doing his Bedford Levels experiment? Has that happened?
Ooh, has it happened? No. They just go round and round in circles with George describing optical effects while Rumpus describes geometric, begging the question, Muppet vision effects. They're like a little double act.
Given how keen he was to describe or to do this test, right, and he still hasn't done it, right, it seems that it's more likely that he has actually done it and he could see stuff he wasn't meant to see, and now he's finding reasons not to do it.
That sounds like something Rumpus would do, yes.
Would you even follow what Rumpus is doing? That's the scary part.
Yeah, I think the same.
I'm not following. That's why I'm asking.
To be fair, I do also watch Bev.
Oh, so Bev's following up, is he? He's following it.
Yeah, if you want to keep up to date with that specific aspect, but it's Bev that's chasing it down.
I think he's done it and realised that he can see far more than he's meant to, and he's shying away from it now.
Well, he already has told us what he's going to get. He's going to have an 18 feet of earth drop. So before anything happens, before he did anything, he already knew exactly what he's going to tell everyone. So it doesn't really matter what he sees because he's already disclaimed what he's going to tell everyone.
Yeah, see, on one side of the argument, you've got their paradigm hasn't changed at all despite the argument moving on. So you're saying maybe he saw more than he should? Well, yeah or no. But that's the bit that we've moved on from. So the more than he should, when you assume physical geometry is going to get in the way, or it hasn't got in the way, it's like, why do we start from the point of whether or not this physical assumption of a bias towards a horizon that's physical is or isn't going to get in the way? We've progressed beyond that. Horizon's not Earth curve, just in case anybody's going, well, why have you progressed beyond that? We've still got things blocked at a certain feet and inches value that doesn't change with distance. Yeah, it's still asserted by people that beg the question of a sphere Earth, which was the point being made by Brian a moment ago. But it doesn't change the fact that the horizon's not Earth curve, and they haven't got R, and they haven't got geometry. So all of this is for nothing. It's just keeping themselves in the 2017 argument after it's ended. It ended at the Isle of Man. The use of this begging the question Muppet vision to assume R and all the geometry that goes along with it, while your sidekick George Netanyahu tells the audience about optical effects. Yeah, that little bait and switch is not going to work even if you split it up amongst two people. But, you know, they want to carry on in that 2017 now dead paradigm of Muppet vision and perspective hijacking and feet and inches values that don't change and how much should or shouldn't be seen behind physical reified sphere edge horizons.
You should have seen in chat when Mitchell from Australia and Brian Logic started saying they're going to charge Globers for their time. They went ballistic.
Yeah, and that's where I'm sticking, and I'm sure Mitchell is too.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Because if you go onto one of their channels, you're going onto a channel, they're going to make money out of it, like they always have. They've made loads of money off our backs. Like, Mitchell had, I think, a couple of hundred views in the same time that, let's say, Mr. Sensible had over 6,000 views. Do you know what I mean? That's the difference. It's like they can make so much money off our backs, and they have done for years. So if I'm going to go onto someone's show, or have to debate somebody, I'm going to be 2 hours of my time wasted. Nothing's going to happen. They're going to claim gravity is a force. They're going to try and claim the horizon is geometric without saying it. You know, they're going to try and claim air has weight without proving it. All this kind of stuff. So what is the point? If I'm going to do that anymore, and I'm going to have a lot of people from their chat abusing me and going over to my channel and leaving comments or whatever, what's the point? If I'm going to do that for 2 hours, it's going to be €5,000.
This is why I said
Oh,
to
wow!
Rachie
Sorry, Anthony, go ahead.
This is why I said to Rachie not to go and fight the Flat Earth channel, because you're not going to progress the conversation anymore. He's just going to shout abuse at you, and he's going to get an opportunity to earn money at your expense whilst he's berating you with no science whatsoever, no progression of the point whatsoever. And even if you get them cornered, like she successfully did, they won't allow you to speak because they can't have their audience seeing that they're cornered. So there's no wins. There's no benefit to doing these shows with these idiots.
Just a weird coincidence, Brian. Funny coincidence you should say that. So in the pre-show before you got here, I was talking about exactly that and saying that some globe troll had approached me, and I contrasted it with somebody who'd been, supporting me via PayPal, and then happened to ask if I could look at something. And I've gone, well, he hasn't come across my door proactively, so I wouldn't normally chase after these things. But then by coincidence, it came up in the show. That's the Flat Earth person asking me to do something, contrasted with some dick going, you need to look at this, it debunks Flat Earth. That sort of attitude. And I've gone, join the show. They've gone, no, you need to look at this. I'm telling you that you're the expert, therefore you have to, because I've complimented you. I'm like, just join the show. No, you're going to be spending your time. And so it went on. Eventually, I got to the point, I'm like, fine. If you want me to dedicate my time to looking at this video, it's 150 quid an hour. I'll send you an invoice. Tell me how long you expect it to take, and I'll just send you an invoice. And then I'll do it for you. After you've paid. Payment in advance. In other words, you saying, fine, it's €5,000. In the last couple of days, I've just taken the same attitude. What is in it for me? Now, I tried to reverse this and explain this to the idiots that are trying to satisfy their desire to debate me by demanding that I debate them. It's like, you have a desire in my interest, and you think that somehow that obliges me to do anything whatsoever, when I've got a public show that you can join anytime you like. No, it does not. You're delusional and self-obsessed. You think it actually matters to me what you want just because you want me? No. Clearly you people didn't do very well with women when you were younger. Otherwise you'd learn quickly that you need to assess the situation for the what's in it for me factor. Me in this instance being me, Nathan Oakley. What's in it for me? Well, precisely fuck all is in it for me. So the answer is no, because there's nothing in it for me. At all. You think coming along with your belligerent dick-style attitude is going to actually encourage me to give you what you want when there is absolutely nothing in it for me? Now, in the case of Rachie, there is something in it for her. She wants to build a YouTube channel and sees that as a method of doing so by exposing herself to a bigger audience. Good for her. Yeah? Me, I don't need those dicks. They don't expand my audience. They don't benefit me in any way. And they don't earn me any money. And yeah, that is why I'm here. So, given that you can join and challenge me any time I'm live, the door is always open. Why on holy hell would I go to your platform, given the description that Anthony's just accurately given, and Brian's just accurately given, about what it will actually benefit me? The answer is that 0. So, if you think, you've got a mute button so I won't come on your show. Oh, really? Well, you don't have to. Nobody's begging you. But if you still have that desire, you can pay for it. You can hand over some fucking money, and then I'll do whatever, within reason, once you've paid, for a certain amount of time. Like Brian saying, €5,000 is a bit steep. I'll make it realistic, because I do actually want people to give me money. And if you're a fundy dick that wants to occupy my private time with your question or belief that you've got a debunking, fine. I'll send you an invoice, pay me, and I'll have a look at it. Otherwise, I am not in the slightest bit interested when I run a live show with an open door. You can have that service for free. Just come on the show. Oh, what, you don't like the conditions that you'll have to face against us, the tiny minority, with the entire Western world behind you? Oh, no, yes, it's so unfair.
Well, what they're going to do next is they're going to completely miss the point of what was just being said there. And they miss the point of me and Mitchell saying we want to get handsomely paid for 2 hours of our time on their channel or whatever.
Oh, that's no worries. I'll just say it for you. I would like to be handsomely paid to go on your channel.
Yeah, well, they're going to now say, well, if you want me to talk to you, it's going to cost this much. Completely missing the point of we don't have...
Yeah. I get all that, Brian. Yeah. I have absolutely no desire whatsoever to spend time with you. That's why you'd be paying me. What, you think that I'm going to suddenly have a massive desire in your direction, and not only have that desire, I'm going to need to fulfill it by paying you? Yeah, again, delusional.
I want to give a shout out to George Musa at this point, who presumably did his interview with Fight the Flat Earth for completely and utterly free, but gave us one of the most useful sound bites that we can ever use. So shout out to George Musa.
What was the... Oh, yes, the gravity is not a force. But you can think of it as a force.
And the other one is we must think of Newtonian gravitation as a force. That doesn't mean it really is a force, but we don't have to necessarily work at the really is level.
Yeah, and you fundies on the side of the globe can continue to work at the not really is level all you like. It doesn't interest me. I'm interested in the physical and natural world. The actual reality we live in, not your models, not your reifications, not your maths, not the I can think of this as a force level of reality. No. Actually at the really is level here. Yeah, I know that really fucks things up for you and your general well-being. That doesn't bother me. Couldn't give a crap. What's that you say? You really need to tell me what's what? All right. Yeah, you can, can't you? Oh, what's that? When you get here and try, it very quickly crumbles and you don't get an opportunity to just chant through it because it's not a neutral platform. No, yeah. I don't care.
So if you've got a price, Nathan, how much would it cost me if I wanted you to wear a NASA top?
Wear a NASA top?
Yeah. So what, if I gave you a sweater with
crazy
NASA
thing
on it,
to ask, would I wear a NASA top?
For a fee?
Don't care. It's like wearing a Marvel top to me. Put a NASA top on, and it has different meanings to different people. You walk past one guy, and he sees NASA and goes, oh yeah, man, that guy's into the same as my 8-year-old. That fully grown man. He likes the space propaganda just like I do. I like that stuff too, right? Or, if I was wearing it, it'd be worn in irony, like I was wearing a Marvel t-shirt.
Well, I just like to say that, just to clarify what I said there, and I did. I'm not going to speak for Mitchell, because Mitchell also has his own price, which is in the thousands as well. But I am willing to debate, let's just say, a PhD in front of the faculty in a university or someone like that in a bigger situation, as long as anywhere in the world, as long as if it's all paid for, like a 4-star hotel, flights, whatever. I want that all paid for.
That's standard.
And I'm willing to do that.
That's
Yeah,
standard.
I'm willing to do all that.
Those things are standard. Hold on,
that.
Brian. I just want to get that in. You don't ask for those things. Those things are standard. So when I went and did Vice, they paid my expenses. That goes without saying. You know, I'm not going to pay to go to them for them to interview me to make their money, and they appreciate that as a business, right? So they paid all my expenses as you would expect them to. So that's the absolute bare minimum that you expect. Now, obviously, you've got a fee at €5,000. I don't know what Mitch's. Did you say it was several $1,000s?
Yeah, Mitchell is 5,000 Australian dollars for 1 hour, which works out about 3,000 euros for 1 hour, whereas mine is 5,000 euros for 2 hours. So he reckons they're getting a discount with me.
Oh, I see. So while those two are mucking around in the thousands of euros and Australian dollars, I'm an absolute bargain. My whore value is much lower, 150 an hour. Like, that is cheap 2-penny dime whore value money. That's really good value from Nathan Oakley, 1980. Definitely.
See, mine's 100-hour winning units.
I can pay that tomorrow.
I think you missed Sleeping Warriors.
Excuse me, that's incorrect. Use of the Arwinian units. Arwinian units only applies to apparent things, not actual things.
Oh right, I thought it was a constant that we could use flippantly anywhere, any time, any occasion whatsoever, just because it's to emphasize the point that it's conceptual.
But in that case, you're going to have to be more specific and call it an Arwinian constant. Because if you're talking about Arwinian units, it's apparent distances.
Got to be specific about this nonsense, Anthony. You know, there's no excuses, really.
Anthony, your question to Nathan was, can he be bought at a price to wear a NASA shirt, correct?
Absolutely. £150 an hour is the rate.
What I was going to suggest is, at Christmas we always have that rule in England where we always wear terrible knitted jumpers, right? We should all sit around on Christmas Day opening our crackers, our Christmas meal, opening, bursting crackers and all that with a hand knitted NASA t-shirt, so we could be properly, because like no matter how bad you're supposed to wear terrible knitted tops, right? That would be our way of doing it.
If it was one size too small, who would we be taking the piss out of?
If what, sorry?
If the NASA shirt was one size too small, who would we be taking the piss out of?
I saw a terrible picture of somebody whose name shall not be mentioned, but it starts with R and it rhymes with Anthony. And he was tarred and feathered with a NASA shirt. And yeah, you're right. It looked like it was a size or two too small.
And that's pretty remarkable considering how small the guy really is.
Yeah, he must have got it shrunk in the wash.
Nathan, you need to bring up your price per hour. That needs to go up, because what's going to happen is someone will pay one of the other big channels out there who want you on to just berate you and mute you and all the rest of it. They will pay 300 to get you on because they know they'll make 900 out of that night.
That's okay. That's good by me. What are you talking about? I wanted to pitch it. I literally discussed this with my wife because I'm like, look, I'm at the point where I'm just going to tell this dick that if he wants my time, he's going to have to give me money. And she was like, yeah, fair enough. And then it got into the conversation. I'm like, well, actually, it would be nice if someone did give me this money. I'm literally e-begging on an almost daily basis at the moment for PayPal donations. So, yeah, I do actually want people to say, okay, yeah, I'll pay you whatever, 150 quid or whatever for however long to sit and tell you you're stupid. All right. Okay, no worries. I mean, unless they're not going to stick me on a show and gag me, are they? Metaphorically, they will. They'll talk straight over the top of me if it's a Fundy Zealot channel. But do I care for a fee? No, I don't care. Do I care? No, not in the slightest, Brian. Sorry, should I have some mental anguish about that aspect?
Wait, what? You can get
no. I was just...
I'd say you should have some mental anguish. I've sent you a picture on Skype again, Nathan. You'd have to pay me an awful lot of money, or with the one exception of Christmas Day, to look like that.
I'm not putting that up. I've got children that watch.
That's how bad it is, though, right? How much would it take for them lot to pay you to wear to do that, to wear that top?
I've already given my price, 150 an hour. I am a whore.
An hour, but if a photo only takes like 2 minutes, put it on, get a shot, take it off.
Are you saying that if I was to pay you money, I could get you to dance to my tune and I could get you to play baller for an hour? You could literally argue for the ball for an hour, seriously as well, not jovially.
Yeah, I'm not saying I will do anything for 150 an hour, Anthony. But yeah, I mean, if you wanted me to play baller, if you got in touch and said, look, right, my appreciation is that to be a good proponent of a flat Earth argument, you've got to know your arguments from the other side really well. Would you be willing to argue for a globe for an hour? I'd be yeah, why not?
What the fuck? I'm gonna charge for my ball win now. Do you understand?
Yeah.
Ballwin does it for free.
Yeah, I know, and I feel ripped off.
Baller Brian doesn't.
But this is supply and demand, Nathan. You've made yourself high in demand. Everyone has requested you to go onto their channels. You can't start going on now for £100.
Why not?
You got to start at like 50,000.
Why?
And then there'll be some stupid baller out there who'll pay you because everyone else can't get you on their show. A guy like Arwen or Brian, they'll go on 10 or 15 shows. Then effectively it's not as desirable to get that individual. It's all supply and demand, economics.
Well, hold on. And there's an exclusivity factor to it, Nathan. If you go for 150 pounds, the value perceived is that your information isn't that important. So I wouldn't say 150. Are you saying an hour? $150 an hour?
Yeah.
Does that include the time it takes to prep and go over the information that they're going to be presenting on their show, like a real debate?
No.
No, see, it should include that.
150 an hour is...
we need a union here because...
Thank you.
I was waiting for that.
Because
I was waiting for it.
40 hour big time. Yeah.
I think the unions... So what I'm basically being told is, if we were unionised, the union would be on me, telling me that I'm devaluing other people in the community's work, right?
You're damn right we would.
Well, what I'm saying though is, individual, your worth on the market is lowered if you'll do it for that cheap. You know, you have value right now. There's people that's got clocks dedicated to you, so your price needs to be lofty. Because I mean, they're creating websites about you. Your value is...
Everyone wants a piece of
There's
Nathan.
a problem. There's got to be a systemic problem, though, because if you're going to do it for whatever price, you're never going to hear the end of it. They're always going to keep on doing memes and clips of that, right? That's what they would do with it. That's the reason why they would pay you for it.
You're saying
for
by
them being able to bully you with it.
By doing this, you mean I might get a load of free advertising by way of memes that are negative in their opinion, keeping my name familiar with everyone nice and constantly? Oh, that sounds terrible.
You need the family price?
If you're sounding like a real ball tart in it, yeah, I would.
You need the family price for flat Earth channels that want you, so that could be the 150, and then you have a price for the baller channels, which should match Brian and Mitchell's, because you'll get it.
Yeah,
I think we need to get David Wise into this.
Well, go ahead, Brian, and then
Have you seen that? Speaking of David Weiss, have you seen the show that him and Jevon do where they play the part of ballers, but play the part of flat Earth? They play ballers, and they basically blame flat earthers or anti-vaxxers for everything. It's really actually pretty good.
No, it's not ballers. It's news readers. They're emulating news readers.
It's really good. It's tongue in cheek, but it is funny.
It's a little too good sometimes. Like they get really, really far with it. But yeah, it is an interesting concept what they're doing.
So Nathan, the reason that I brought up the whole economics aspect was that remember that these stupid ballers paid Greater Sapien $20,000 for a trip he never took. So we're not dealing with the brightest bunch here, and you just need one who's willing to pay 10 grand or 15 grand to get
It's worth
the Nathan Oakley.
It's worth reminding people that that Greater Sapien flight, we all told them that that flight was never going to happen because reasons, and they ignored it anyway and paid him anyway. But the flight can't ever happen, never. So they can just recycle that claim there and just go and get another GoFundMe for a flight, and then for it not to happen again, and then say, oh, something happened and the money's gone. But they'll ignore the fact that the flight's not took place in the first place.
Yeah, but it is in the time though before we figured out that the globe doesn't have the geometric horizon and all that. So they were much more brave. Like they were like, oh yeah, we're gonna do it. We're gonna out money them. We're gonna out argument them. So they were very courageous and easy to trick to basically pay money to baller scammers, right? They're not gonna fall for that sort of thing right now because they know they've lost now. They know they're not gonna admit it, but they know.
Anti-flat earthers know they lost. Ballers don't.
No, I don't think you're right there, Arvin, because now they're saying a radius line is curved. It got worse.
Yeah, but that doesn't mean that they're going to back that up with money, you see? Because the victory seemed more real. Now it's just more delusional from their side.
Nathan, the more money you charge, the more money you have for advertising. And I know a way of using a particular cryptocurrency by using the community that supports this particular cryptocurrency for them to advertise you. And they're over 1 million strong and rising daily. For them to advertise you just by you buying and burning these particular tokens, which is bringing down the circulating supply, which is making it head towards deflationary, which is bringing up the price of the token, which is making everyone money. So I know a way of you doing that, but you won't get anywhere for 150 an hour. You won't be able to advertise yourself with that.
And if you're going to do 150 an hour, then make sure it's like with a minimum of 150, right?
So one of the chatters said, this whole money talk, this is Mike 808, this whole money talk and what everyone is worth is so tacky. Very similar to when you guys talk about fighting. A bunch of what-if scenarios that will never happen. Yeah, I agree, Mike. Like I said, this was tongue-in-cheek at first. It's developed into an interesting conversation, as crass as it is, and I agree.
Well, that's why
until the first flat earther does get paid, okay, it's tacky.
Notice how it's developed in the same way. We were talking hypothetically, right, metaphorically, but it's become a thing now. We've reified it into existence in exactly the same way they do with gravity. If you can start arguing about it or over-talking about it, and it becomes real then, right?
Yeah. Before you know it, somebody's employed.
Temporarily.
Somebody sets up a union. They're getting paid, and there's budgets going by, and for what? For nothing. There's nothing happening. There's nothing in existence. Nobody's getting paid. Nobody's hired me. It's all nonsense. But yet we can literally, from the back of this conversation, we could develop a union from it.
Dude, you need to get an agent.
No, Nathan, there is a value to all this space exploration. We need to research what happened at the beginnings of time.
Gravity.
Oh, shit. Sorry. We were talking about unions on money. Oh, sorry. I thought we were talking about investing in space-time discovery then.
NASA aren't unionized.
I know. I'm just
talking about space-time, Tony. Did you see the article I'm presenting for the last half hour?
Just pointing out how things reify into existence.
Go ahead, Owen.
Right.
This is actually on topic. Go ahead.
Yeah, I just wanted to point out that I totally called it.
Hold on, Solar. Just 1 sec. Go ahead, Arwin, then Solar.
Right. So, yeah, I just spotted a half an hour ago an article on RT where it's theorized, really, colloquially theorized, that black holes could be space-time portals. But at the bottom it said, it's still on rather shaky ground.
What with space-time being
article-worthy.
What with space-time being a convention, a medium that doesn't exist dodgy ground in the respect that their descriptions of things in the sky that we don't see, but they say we can see, are actually ascribed to fourth-dimensional space-time bending and could potentially be a portal in this dimension we don't exist in. So it's a portal through Narnia. So this is like describing the wardrobe. Then this is like the wardrobe.
Right. This is wardrobe mechanics finally worked out.
And really,
Finally, we're getting some resolve here in the concept.
All we're seeing is a lack of pixel activity with our photo cameras. That's all we're seeing, lack of pixel activity.
No, wardrobe mechanics.
Yeah, wardrobe mechanics. How much hang time does that have, Arvin?
That depends if the doors are open or closed.
Hang on, I have to say something here. Hypothetical be bollocks. It's €5,000 for Brian's logic behind your channel for 2 hours and get his time wasted. There's nothing hypothetical about that. I'm dead serious about that. Now, I just wanted to put that out there, just so no one thought it was just tongue in cheek. It's not. It's cash money.
Well, Adam does point out that they need us. We don't need them. So why not charge them?
Exactly.
I think, if I could
I'd
address
do my baller thing on mainstream news if they actually wanted me to.
If I could just address what was said in the chat being tacky. It's not really. This isn't a pre-planned thing to go out and get revenue. It's kind of not even important if you get the revenue. It's more of a response and a notice of what's going off. As Brian highlights, they get all this money and that's fine. And they need us for content. And that's all that's being said. We're not saying this is how we should be making a living. We're just saying if these guys who need us for content want us, well, it's reasonable to have to pay for it. Now, I'm pretty sure, and this is why I'd put a bigger rate up, only 1 hour session, they'll milk for many and many an episode with thousands of views ridiculing us. So it seems reasonable if they're going to get that level of revenue, that up front, they're going to take this and take the mick or do whatever, for their financial benefit, that they recompense anybody that's prepared to do that. And I don't think that the numbers that are being talked are unreasonable.
Okay, well, I'll backtrack a little bit then, Adam, and say that when I specifically said this to a troll who was trying to occupy my time by answering his questions, in other words, sharing his pain with me and trying to relieve his pain via me, I said, if you want me to look at this, that would be look at this video and give you my opinion. My price is $150 an hour. So that might change. For example, if somebody said, well, I want you to sit on camera, on mic, on my show for an hour, then that might change. I might say, no, I think for that I'd want at least $1,000. You never know.
Well, then it's settled. When you're going to critique a video on your own time, but not on a live show, $150 an hour. If you're going to go on a show, €5,000.
No, so just to reiterate, that my point was, it's not financial planning that we're making. It's making a point to the ballers. Fine. If you do want to keep engaging us and using us, because that's all you've got for content, then fine. Just recompense us respectfully at the amount that you're clearing. And if you look at those figures, I think that's a reasonable sum. So that's all it is. It's not a plan to get out of poverty. It's not a plan for people. But I do think it's reached a point, and I think John was alluding to it earlier, especially with you, Nathan, that there's demand there. And in any walk of life, you should be recompensed for your time. And your time and value is relative to what people can earn from it. And I think those
correct, and that's why I agree, Adam, and that's why your pay should be dependent upon their viewer count, right, and the amount of money. So you should be working on a percentage, not on a flat rate.
No, I don't think so at all. I think you should charge. You should charge. Sorry, Soda. 1 second. You should charge what your time is worth, and my time is worth $2,500 for 1 hour. Sorry, €3,000 for 1 hour, €5,000 for 2 hours. That's what my time is worth.
I see. Sliding rate. Very interesting.
I wouldn't anchor the price on the viewer count. I would anchor the price on the quality of viewers it's going to attract.
Okay, you've all missed Adam's point. He said it twice. So I'm now going to reiterate Adam's point for him. What Adam is saying is there is a position where there is a supply of flat earthers. Now, there is a demand for flat earthers by anti-flat earthers, the ones that will receive all of the views because they get all of the promotion. Therefore, at the moment, there's an imbalance. And Adam's saying, the very fact that we are discussing this at all, like Minds with Brian having said that, me having to have mentioned it at the beginning of the pre-show, means that there's been an occurrence where there's a demand for something that's in short supply. Now, from the chat, the same guy who made the original comment said that, I'll just read out his comment as verbatim as I can. Not tacky when asking for money, Brian, asking for $5,000 when there is no demand and sorry, get a bit closer to the screen. When there is no demand, it at even a minimal cost, I think that is. So what he's basically saying is, no, it's tacky when you're saying I demand £5,000 when there's nobody offering anything at all. But where I disagree with the commenter is there is definitely a demand. That's Adam's point. So I've stressed it. Adam's tried twice. I want Adam to reiterate his point, if you'll let him. Go ahead, Adam.
You've made it. There is a demand there, and I say time is money to everybody. And if you're gonna, like, if Brian was being asked to go and do his day job, then he wouldn't be charging that rate. But actually, there are very few specialised experts in this field, and I do think it's reasonable to have an expert have a fee that's commensurate with whatever will be earned. And I appreciate the point the person's making, and it's like I say, it's not about the amount. The amount's just actually, I think, reasonable, but it's about the simple fact that these people want to make a living from our knowledge. Well, that's fine. And if you want it and you want direct access to it, then here's the rate for it. And I'm sure if you take that recording, you'll go and make your money. But there is a market there. And as the experts, they can set the price. Somebody wants to undercut, that's absolutely fine. But I think we should be at the stage now realizing that our knowledge, our expertise is in demand, and you are entitled to charge whatever you want. I think that's a reasonable amount because they can bloody well afford it. They've made more than enough money off the back of us already, and I'll end there.
Yeah, but that's our school, by the
That's
way.
one aspect.
A classification of
If I can
knowledge, it
just
should
add
be
something.
designated as a school.
Just one second, Arby. Go ahead, Solar.
Thanks. What I just wanted to add was, so what Adam's described so well there is an expert opinion, and that's definitely valuable. Even having it in court, you have to pay for it. So that's one aspect. But pulling a viewership or being able to bring an audience just simply due to the celebrity status is another aspect which is to be quantified. So in terms of certain fighters that gets viewership all around the world will get more fights and higher prize money because of the audience they can bring, not necessarily a higher quality of fight. So someone like a Nathan Oakley can bring thousands with him. Someone like a Jaren or someone like a DITRH brings thousands with them. So therefore, financially, it makes a lot of sense. So there's a lot to do with the audience that is garnered by the individual.
I would just like to say on that my price is high, not just because of whatever knowledge I may have or may not have, or not just because it's my time and I don't want to have it wasted. It's because for 6 years, there's been nothing but character assassination of us going on.
Right.
And a lot longer than that. That's the main weapon against flat earthers forever. If I'm going to have to go onto a show I don't want to be on anymore, I don't want to be on these shows anymore. So if someone wants me on them shows anymore, then it's going to be €5,000 for 2 hours of my time. I'll give them the PayPal link, they pay me the money, I'll go on the show and I'll have the debate with them. They can mute me, do whatever they want, but only as they normally do. We're not going to accept any. I'm not going to be wearing a NASA jumper or any of that nonsense. But That's it. I don't want to go on there. So if you want me on there, I want to have something to look forward to afterwards, more than people coming along and abusing me in their chat and abusing me on my channel and whatever else.
Right. It's reparations insurance.
Yeah, that's a good way of looking at it.
Well, you all realize this is opening up another can of worms that was put to the side about them using your content in their videos now, right?
No, there's no issue with that. Why would that be an issue? That's already dealt with in terms of fair use, copyright, things of that nature.
But yeah, if the information doesn't exist except in, from you, then why would they need to have you on their show if they could just play a clip of you saying it,
I don't know. That's up to them. Like I say, that my desire or reasoning behind their desire, I haven't even considered. I don't care why I'm being asked. I just know I'm being asked.
Okay, I see your point. Yep.
Why not? Why not charge? Which one of us, and I'm speaking for any flat earther, which one of us needs to go on them shows? What do we get out of that? Nothing. We get character assassination. I think at this stage that people in the flat earth community have started enjoying the attack. You can kind of get into I won't call it a victim mindset, but you start enjoying the fact that you're always on the back foot. But it's time to step out into the light.
Start flexing our
being in the
muscle.
dark. Sorry, Neil?
Start flexing our muscle a little bit and get paid at the same time.
Yeah,
I think I think Arwin's better described it with reparation insurance. And Brian's, off the back of Brian's description, it's like we know what you'll use the material for, and it won't be to our benefit. It's not like we're going to go on there and you're going to go, oh, we really like your stuff. In other words, akin to Dave Murphy when he went on that show over in Portugal or wherever it was. He went on a show that were talking about him and his experience within Flat Earth, and it went out to millions. Yeah? Well, that's obviously in his benefit. Now, none of the people who are asking me to go on their neutral platform to debate them without my quote-unquote mute button, none of them are asking because they want to promote me or serve me any benefit in that regard. Therefore, there's no benefit. There's nothing in it for me. And that's what Brian's saying. We already know what the score is and what you want to have us there for. What you claim to be neutral platforms are your way of saying we want to get around whatever safeguards we have had to put in place here on Flat Earth Debate to stop complete chaos descending whenever a point that destroys your globe comes up. That's the real reason why you guys have to fundy, mute and chant. Now, you want the opportunity to do that because it's the only way you'll get a perceived win. Well, that's going to cost you.
Bottom.
This is dangerously close to my idea. Not what y'all are talking about, but on the other side of it, I'm not going to mention it. I'm just going to do it, but this is approaching it.
Why don't you just write a book of all the things we do and get it in order? That will sell.
Sounds like a lot of work, Neil.
It does, right?
I'm waiting for that book to come out too.
It's called audiobook. It's Monday through Friday.
That's what the debates represent, though, in terms of if there was ever to be, in a perfect idealistic world from our perspective, a paradigm change for the Western world, well, then that's what this show serves as. It shows the progression from bog standard, globe-believing normie, that's me, finding out the information, interviewing as many flat earthers as possible, and then finding out the contrasting point of view from the globe side for a prolonged period of time. End conclusion, me sat not stressed, not concerned about the nature of reality, intrigued with what it may be, and a load of other people very angry and very cross about how they get shut down. It's like, hang on, you could walk away from this and everybody would still be on your side. So why do you care? Why are your interests in my direction? Because I shatter that daily, don't I? I don't lose sleep, but you do. And you want to put me in my place, or Brian in his place, or 10th man in his place, so that you can get a better night's sleep. That's all this boils down to. We've known it for years. Yeah? Well, that pain relief can come in two forms. One, here, for free. But you won't be getting any relief. Yeah? Or two, you can pay for it, and you can fundy mute and chant through me that the Earth's a sphere and gravity's real and I don't understand what forces are for an hour, and it'll cost you. Either way, you'll get what you think is pain relief, because you'll get to challenge me. And that's what you are telling me you want when you constantly approach me, telling me you want it. And I'm like, I don't care what you want. Why would I care what you want? Oh, because you want me? Yeah, back to my original point. You obviously didn't do very well with the ladies.
And we still have a flat earth debate because we constantly will argue with each other. Like, if I say the word mass, QE is going to say, what's mass? And straight away then, I'm stuck with trying to explain myself, right? Even something as small as that, we don't allow anything get past the radar. Nothing gets past our radar within our own circle even. We definitely don't allow that within our own circle. We're called out the minute we start talking a load of rubbish by each other. So
not an echo chamber.
It can't be then.
That's right. It's a high-tech radar system. That's what we are.
Good one, Arwen.
It's also the how can I explain this? Let's say you when I had a trade, I used to paint, do woodwork, and wallpaper, and prior to going into financial services, and I'd get called on the job that somebody else who said they were in that trade messed up. And they'd say, what can we do here? And I said, well, did you get references before you went with this guy? No, not really. I go, all right. So what is it you want me to look at? All right, well, it's an hour's drive for me just to get to their house to look at it. Then I got to bid it. Then are they bidding me against somebody else before they choose? So I found all that out in advance. I'm not coming an hour just to tell you what I know after years of experience, just so you could use it against me. So I get the job, so then I drive the hour. So because I know I have it. And then I'd fix it because I tell them all my charges in advance and they agree to it on the phone. And I would include my gas, my travel time, and the person who taught me this trade taught it to me well. I remember I was just saying, when are you going to let me hang my first roll of wallpaper? And he says, I want you to watch first. I want you to watch this guy, and then we'll ease you in. So this guy was real particular in getting everything right. So that passed on to me, and I trained two other guys when I had my own business. They went on to have successful businesses. So all that time, all of that learning. So in this case, from a business point of view, how much time has Brian's Logic put into this arena since he got into it? How many hours has he studied? How many books has he read or bought? What are the costs involved? And then, how many computers did he go through? All of these things add up to where we get Brian today, who's a different Brian than the guy who started 6 years ago. His value is so worth it right now because he's going to save me 6 years. How much would you pay when someone could save you 6 years of learning curve? That's the value that someone like Brian and Nathan and Adam, my goodness, I go to Adam because I don't get math as well as he does, not even close. So Adam brings value because he's put time into math. How much is that worth when someone wants it and it's not part of the panel? Adam should charge.
Thank you, Tent. And you know what? There's something else that is a big part of the high fee. How many people in our own personal lives have we lost contact with simply because they can't handle facts that we can handle? So we all have it forever at the time you're a flat earther. As soon as you're a flat earther, you're going to have personal problems with people around you because they won't be able to, you're not going to be the person they want you to be at that stage. You're going to be who you are. And there is all that element in it over those years. So if I have to make all those sacrifices, sacrifice people that I used to be great friends with and family with and all that stuff, if I have to make all those sacrifices, I'm not coming on your show for 2 hours to get berated and be put down and whatever else. So you can make money and have a little laugh. I don't care about that. If you want me on that show, it's 5,000 for 2 hours, 5,000 euros for 2 hours.
Okie dokie. Well, with that, I'm going to say a huge, massive, enormous thank you, first and foremost, to both Discord and G Plus panels for making today's after show possible. Also, a massive thank you to all of you in the members-only live stream for joining us live. And, of course, a massive thank you to all of you if you're watching on either Nathan Oakley 1980 or Nathan Oakley Premiering streams, hopefully smashing the super chat, liking, commenting, sharing, subscribing, and all that good stuff. I've been Nathan Oakley, and I will see you all in the next video.